these seats free. We don't necessarily want the personnel in, then I will contact so that we can discuss to the going.
Welcome to the Parish Minister. As you know, this is able to share their certainly for us as well, be able to respond, search what is the opportunity. So start the ball rolling.
Panel, Jordan. Here, one, I know that and I have an attire, children in the car. I just want we would have these in, but there's a you have to avoid. This would be ready.
Seeing some of the efforts it's rehabilitated.
I know that.
In more so the back somewhat in the Spice Archer's Lane, the alley, which was from next 2 weeks or so completed, weather permitting. Road in colleague MP St. Peter, 828 to Black. We are the 30 constituent a little piece of the pipe stage, or they're at the bill of quantity stage, which essentially means that we're almost ready to go. And I'm hopeful that once the majority of these works with the Mill and Pave project has been completed before the end of the financial year, we can actually start to see a great uptake in the Scotland District roads that are also to be done. I can highlight for you as well, there are 4 roads specifically that are in the first phase of the detailed designs. We're looking at Fore Hill to the junction with Prospect and Indian Ground. There's also Sailor Gully, Orange Hill, and the French Hill, Mount Brevita area, as well as French Village, yeah, Mount Brevita and the Prospect Road. So we've pulled from each of the areas in the Scotland districts a number of roads that, again, depending on the type of the condition per se, we've been able to pull out some of those to be able to get them going. And of course, you raise the issue of patching, the pothole patching. We took a different approach in the last few months. I know there's still a lot to be done, because there is a lot to be done. So there is still a lot more to be done. But what we actually recognized was that within the ministry, the pothole patching teams were not being as effective as I think they ought to be. And I think Barbadians were expressing that across all mediums. And what we did was we approached the private contractors as well, and we asked them to join the ministry in working with us to be able to accelerate some of the pothole patching. So I must tell you that we will move in the direction of having a central location where people can raise their concerns about potholes across the country. But right now, what has been quite effective is the comments on the calling programs, the comments on social media, people just simply messaging, and the MPs as well, messaging to indicate where there are concerns. And of course, the Parish Speaks, which highlights for us a lot of the areas sometimes that might be overlooked. But what we've been doing is trying to identify those areas of concern and then sending the contractors along with the MTW teams into the various constituencies, in particular St. Peter as well, to be able to rectify some of those challenges. Before you say it, I know that there are also concerns regarding how the pothole patching is done. And that is something
can I interject
we're working
here?
on as well. Sure.
Why I brought that up, this was before the rains came in. I think it was after we had laid to rest Sir Erskine Sandiford. One night I was coming home and I had 5 children with me, and it was like 11:15 in the night. And because of the water in the pothole, I would not have known it's a pothole. So I went into the pothole, and this was really, serious for the children. There was no one to change a tire, because I can't change a tire. As people say, women only drive a car. And then my rim was broken. And I walked up in gaps to see if I can find someone. But I eventually had to walk home with the children with me. And we got home like 12:30 the night. And of course, the children went and said that all over the school. I'm saying that to say that it wasn't my fault. And I really don't want a reoccurrence of that again. I'm happy that Bovell Road and so on, those roads down here are fixed, but to me, those roads are not as important as Mullins and Gibbs Road and Gordon Greenwich Road, because Gordon Greenwich Road is a road we use like 5 times a week. And there's a certain part of Gordon Greenwich Road, you get to the nice part, but then you can't go left or right because there's a big crater. And that is mashing up axles and all that. I have to spend now money to buy a rim, okay, which I did not plan for. So I'm saying that Bovell Road and those roads down here, they're not oft used like 10, 15 times a day. So I'm happy that work is being done, because I'm seeing it. So I applaud you for that. My other question, and not really question, concern, and I spoke about this at the last town hall meeting, and nothing was done. Because as an educator, I'm very concerned about literacy in this country. That's what I teach. Sleep, drink, and eat. And there's a downhill slide with literacy. Education generally, sorry to say. But literacy, which is my baby, I have been asking since last town hall meeting to have somewhere on a Saturday to house children that I teach. And these are children who are unable to pay. So there are children from that lower echelon who need help. But there's nowhere to put them, so we have to use under the tree. So I really would like now at this second town hall meeting, if the representative can find somewhere, the community centers need to be reopened, they're all closed, and to find somewhere where people like me who teach voluntary on a Saturday can house these children. So because these children, 9 and 10 and 11, cannot read. So I really would like that addressed ASAP. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The location, and I remember you mentioned it last time, and I'm not sure, I don't remember what the follow-up was, but we do have a community center, as you know, and maybe we should explore using upstairs, which is the open area. Downstairs is the computer and the other offices. And so coming up to this, that's something that we will explore, and I'll speak to you on that after we've spoken, because I know you spoke about opening the community centers, but it is open and various groups use it at different times. So we'll have to speak to community development. I'm talking about one in Spicedown, that major walk, and find out when over the weekend there is a free period of time that you may be able to use. So I'll speak to you on that after we've done some inquiries.
Just to follow on from that as well, though, I think that the other important point to make is that the schools as well are also an opportunity for, as a location, to be able to utilize on the weekends. And for a long time, we've been trying to make that transition from schools being from morning till evening and then being able to have extracurricular activities after hours as well. It obviously requires additional resources because in some cases you have to look at the issues of cleaning. You're going to have to look at, discussions with unions in terms of additional staffing. But I think that it is worth exploring if you have the students that are possibly able to attend the classes to be able to have some discussions with some of the schools within the communities and see how possible that may be to get going. Okay, thank you. Next person.
Good night, Madam Chair. First, let me say thanks. Oh, Neville Cato. First, let me say thanks. Oh, Mount Breviter, number 28, Mount Breviter. Sorry. First, let me thank the government for some of the work that they have done in Queen Street. I am very impressed. But there are 4 lanes in this district, in this era. Archer's Lane, Porter's Lane, Bovers Lane, and Mango Lane. My problem is this. Porter's Lane did not do. That is not really what bothered me. Be honest. There is a problem in Porter's Lane. The garbage truck cannot get into Porter's Lane. The fire engine cannot get up into Porter's Lane because of the corner down Queen Street. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, those houses in Porter's Lane is adjacent to this school. There are 27 or 28 houses up in there. 2.5 years ago, we had a fire in there. We had a fire, and those houses are closed. Good for the men and women of the area. Every house in that area have holes. There's not even a hydro in there to help them to deal with the fire. Because of the fast movement of the young men and women and families, they were able to save after a disaster in that area. Right against the school there, that is Porter's Lane. Second point, the young people have to get up on mornings, walk all around the road, and come back there. From here to come back there to catch the bus to go to work. A couple of years ago, it was known that they were going to take the road and carry it right to the end. The road only stopped short right there. So it meant that the garbage truck cannot get in. The fire engine men come and they say, oh Lord, we can't get down in there. And so it meant that the people in that area is left stranded if they have a fire in there. And I am highlighting this because the road can go right through and attach to the top road. That traffic can come in, ma'am. And I'm much concerned because I have a couple of family live down in there. And I said I'm going to highlight it tonight because it need to be done before we have a disaster in there. It almost occurred 2 years ago. And we don't want that to happen. So I'm just highlighting that to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, I thank you for highlighting it. I'm not sure if the Chief Technical Officer is aware of the road or the need for the extension, but it's definitely something that we can look at to see if it is possible to be able to extend it all the way out. And I think if it is possible, then we can certainly look at bringing it into the works program. I have areas like that in my constituency, and I know that there are many others across Barbados where it is difficult for the emergency services to get in. And I think while we are working on milling and paving and doing all of the other programs, these are also areas that we have to, again, prioritize on the agenda. So I thank you for raising it. Just to let you know, I don't think there was a deliberate attempt to omit the road that you've mentioned in Porters. Again, we have selected specific roads just simply to be able to touch each of the parishes, and then the intention is to come back in. And in addition to that, we have the paving team at MTW that will also be following through on some of the additional roads that will be coming out of the Parish Speaks and the other programs as well. All right, thank you. Next person.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and the representative for St. Peter, Mr. Jordan. I'm concerned about, I suppose.
Your name and address.
Oh,
your name and address,
Carol
please.
Richards, and I'm from supposed to be from Block 5C, Mainland St. Peter. But at the moment, I can't live in it. I came back to Barbados in December 2021. And I went to the housing from the 28th and spoke to Mr. Griffith about the situation with the house and all the conditions in it. He promised it would have been fixed. Mr. Allen came on January 2022, and he did all the measurement and everything about the house. Nothing was done. Then Mr. Cox came in July, the same 2022. Nothing still was done. He came and he measured again. Mr.
Ma'am, can you just clarify what type of repairs are to be done?
Okay.
Yeah.
There are 5 windows. We need 5 windows. All the windows, they're no good. The frame for the back door and the front door, especially the back door, that can't lock. And some person, since I moved back, they stole some of my stuff, because you can push the door and it can open. All the frames are rotten. Then there was the plumbing. When you open the pipes, all the bathroom used to be flooded and like that. So they came and they keep on like measuring, and nobody came. I went to Mr. Jordan's office and I spoke to his secretary, and she was very nice, and she called me back and told me she spoke to the housing. Then she called back again and asked if anything was done. I said no, nothing was finished. I spoke to Mr. Griffith again, and he asked me, Ms. Richards, your house ain't fixed yet? Well, that was 2 years ago. I said, I hope you know that. He said, okay, I'm going to try to get it done. Okay, they're sending people now, but there's no material. They're there, but there's nothing to be done. They came 3 weeks ago, and they knocked out all the bathroom walls and every kind of thing. The pipes are just there open. They tried to fix the bathroom stuff from outside because it was leaking, and nothing seems to be done. I can't live in my place. There's no electricity. Even before I came back here, this is 10 years I've been trying to get electricity in my place. They came and rewired them, but there's nothing being done. Why am I paying for some place that I can't live in? They claim they don't have material. They, 3B, they came and do the roof in 3B over the weekend, say it's emergency. I spoke to the gentleman, Mr. King, Tuesday, and said, well, since that is a priority, mine is a priority too, because where I am staying, the land is being sold, and I have to be out of there by April. So what am I supposed to do? I need somewhere to live, and it's just making me sick because I have health issues.
So, ma'am, it's an NHC unit you're referring to,
Yes,
which is under the
please,
20-year program, or this is
I was there since 1987. I had that unit, but I haven't bought it or anything like that because I wasn't here. But when I came back, they said that was stopping all kind of stuff like that. So I don't really know.
Right. I think the first thing is to ascertain the status of your interest in the property. I think that is a conversation you need to have first with NHC. I was asking if Mr. Gill was present here.
So I spoke to Mr. Gill too. He's
yeah.
one of the gentlemen I went to, Mr. Thornhill, Mr. Sutherland, his secretary, everybody I spoke with.
Right.
And everybody keep on promising, but nothing is being done.
So what I'm going to ask you to do is to just perhaps just share the information with Mr. Morris so that we can follow up with you. Just to say that, yes, there is a program that is ongoing for the upgrade of the housing units across the country. So in some cases, it is the rehabilitation in terms of the electrical upgrades. They're taking it step by step because, again, it is a lot to be done.
Yeah, because
Okay?
they did reward millionaires.
Precisely. So,
Right,
so
they
that
did
work
revert
has
that.
started across the
Yes.
country because that was also obviously endangering the lives of a number of people within the housing areas. As it relates to the ongoing maintenance, I know that that is a challenge for NHC. I, however, can't comment on it until I actually understand your status in terms of the unit and certainly the particulars surrounding the actual district and why it is that they have not actually completed the works that they've started. So if you can just share the details with the block number with Mr. Morris, and we will certainly follow up with you to just get to the bottom of it.
Another case I have is with the NIS. Before I came back, I called them, and they said I didn't have enough contributions. They told me what to do. So I did that. On the 13th of January 2022, I went up there, and they said, okay, you have enough contributions, just go around the corner and fill out the form. I looked at her. She said, no, around the corner there. So I went and I got the form, and I went upstairs, and I filled out the form. The lady keep on looking at me. I said, is there a problem? She said, so you're applying before your time. I said, no, I'm going to be 67 next month. She said, you sure? Let me see your ID. She said, okay, yes, you're 67. I said, but is there a problem? She said, no. After I didn't receive any contributions, the money, I went up there. But the problem I have, every time I go back, my contributions keep on going down. Because there was 488. They said, you don't have enough, you only got 480. I said, but I was told I had my 500. Then I went back the next week, it was 487. Couple of days, it was 486. No, it's 483. So I don't know what's going on. They're telling me they're going to give me a lump sum. I said, a grant. I said, what am I going to do with that? Because then I have to pay housing and stuff for rent and everything, and when that money gone, how am I going to live? But nobody can tell me anything. I appeal it. And then I applied for a non-contributionary one. They told me to do that. But I haven't heard about anything that since November 2022. And this is 24. So I would like to know really what's going on. I had to say from the time I land back in Barbados, relocate back here, it's be like one problem after the next. And I don't think it is fair.
That is a matter that Social Security falls under me, national insurance. That is something I would have to ask and get some details on to find out exactly what the challenge is. So if you will allow me to do that over the next couple of days, I'll be able to get back to you on that.
I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What I would like to get, do you know your NIS number offhand?
Yes, please.
So, but you can tell me that
Okay.
privately. You can come down and tell me. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person.
Good evening, Madam Chair and panel members. My name is Lynn Boynton, and I'm from Palomar Gardens in Mullins. I'm sorry that the Prime Minister isn't here at the moment because I was going to commend her on her efforts and endeavours on the world stage regarding the ecosystems that need maintaining throughout the globe. And to highlight against that background an ecosystem that really needs to be addressed here in Barbados. I'm talking about Gibbs Gully, which is straddled by Mullins onto the north and Gibbs to the south. There's two phases. Phase one is to the north on the Mullins side, and phase two is to the south on the Gibbs side. Phase one has been very quietly sort of rolled over, even though no progress has ever been made since the planning permission was given in 2010. And there's never been any environmental impact assessment done on phase one, which is actually on the actual gully, the watercourse. And even though no maintenance or progress was ever made to start the development, the planning permission has been rolled over and over and over again, and now it stands to put up to 18 townhouses on the gully, which actually does affect the watercourse itself. Now, the gully comes down from Black Bess we get a lot of water that comes all the way down to Gibbs Bay. And as you know, there's a lot of agricultural land between Black Bess and Gibbs Bay. And the trees and the soil and the tree roots are incremental in catching the runoff from chemicals that come from the agricultural works, but also other commodities that come down that could affect and really actually destroy the reef off Gibbs Bay. The gully itself is an animal sanctuary to, we have red-footed tortoise, we have 2 troop of monkeys just living in the lower gully itself. We have 3 species of bats, which are really important for the mosquito community, to keep that down during dengue times particularly. And we also have the Barbados thread snake, which is the smallest snake in the world, and I believe that our gully and Welshman's Hall Gully are the only ones that actually have that surviving. So it's a really important ecosystem there that we need to protect. So that's phase 1, which I say has been refused, or they say that we don't need an environmental impact assessment. And I think that the environmental issues have changed dramatically since 2010. And I would ask if we could get an environmental impact assessment done on phase 1. Phase 2 is the south of the gully, sorry. And if I could just tell you, it's billed in international media as Eden Grove, an expansive 20-acre eco-mini city, I'll repeat that, mini city, comprising 150 homes, a hotel, spa, and wellness facilities, retail outlets, restaurants, sporting amenities, a cinema, and more. Now, that is a mini city in between 2 very quiet residential areas of Mullins and Gibbs. It's going to impact completely the entire area in terms of impacting and roads, the flooding that we have in terms of, the whole area, the infrastructure, how will it cope with this addition? This development will add a significant net gain in CO2. The carbon footprint will be massive. It'll add to the island's emissions and loss of carbon capture because of the destruction of the magnificent trees, including some very old, established flamboyant trees that are actually in the gully. Already, a lot of the land has been destroyed. A lot of the trees have been pulled up. The developer does not yet have planning permission. It's in review. There's been a lot of objections against it. But anyway, we'd just like to know how this mini city can be allowed to go ahead on gully land. So we would like the Prime Minister, with her eco-credentials, to bring them to Barbados and help us to save Gibbs Gully from its destruction. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the concerns which you've raised. I can certainly tell you that within the cabinet, Minister Ford is perhaps the one person who is the constant champion of things related to the environment. And just as we were listening to you, it reminded us of his lectures every Thursday as it relates to the preservation of the entire ecosystem. On the question that you raised on the environmental impact assessment, I've asked Senior Minister Duguid just to take the floor as he's responsible for the Ministry of Planning.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Yes. So I recognized that the Eden Grove, as you said, is obviously a concern to the residents of Mullins and, in fact, all the people of St. Peter and St. James because it borders and straddles the 2. There are 2 sites. One, as you said quite rightly, has permission that goes back a very long time. The other site does not yet have a permission. And as you said, it requires an environmental impact assessment. What that is essentially is the applicant must take into consideration all the flora, fauna, all of the topography, what the impact will be on the residents, the traffic, how the traffic will impact, how garbage and sewage is dealt with, and everything. So the Planning and Development Committee has sent back a terms of reference explaining to the applicant exactly what must be in the environmental impact assessment. They then accept or reject that, and then we come to an agreement as to what must be in terms of reference, and then the environmental impact assessment is commissioned and done. It takes quite a few months. After the environmental impact assessment is done, included in that will be a town hall meeting. All objections will be considered, and we take them very, very seriously. We take into consideration not only traffic, garbage disposal, sewage, water, impacts on water, what it will do to the environment, what it does to everything and the residents around. Residents will have an opportunity at the town hall as well to be able to voice their concerns, and then all of the information together with the information from water, electricity, everybody then is put before the board, and the board makes a decision. But rest assured that the concerns of the residents feature very, very highly in that decision and in environmental impact assessment.
Could I just take you back to phase one and an environmental impact assessment now, as things have changed in the world with regards to the ecosystem and the climate? Thank you.
Yes, once someone has a permission and they have had a building start and they maintain that permission, permissions normally last for 5 years. But once the person has a permission and they have had a building start and have a certificate of building start, it's very difficult to go back behind the permission that has already been given. But however, that will be taken into consideration for the second phase, because it can be considered as two phases, as part of the first phase. So they will take it into consideration, but I cannot say that there will be an environment impact assessment for phase one, because the application now is for the second part. I hope that answers all your questions. And by the way, I anticipated it, so I got that update just a few minutes ago from Mr. Headley. I understand that Mr. Headley and Ms. Bryan met with the residents, and they've been in constant contact.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person.
Hi, my name is Heather Best, and I also live in Gibbs. And my question also pertained to that particular project. My property directly backs, that massive development directly backs onto my property. I think I'm maybe one of two houses that it actually backs up onto. And my question is, and I appreciate what you said about the environmental studies and the this and that and the other. Two things came up. Was that project actually started more than 5 years ago? Because from what I see happening in front of me, it just happened last year.
What normally happens is when somebody has approval, there's something called building start, and they apply for building start, and there are certain things that they would have to do. Put up hoarding, do clearing, whatever. And as I understand it, that building, that application that they do have is current and has not lapsed.
Oh, but I thought you said that they had to have started, that it was 10 years ago and that they had to have started within 5 years.
Right, so they did start and they have a certificate.
They started more than 5 years ago?
They have a certificate stating that the building
okay.
start was, so
All right.
in other words, they did the works to make the application valid.
I see, okay.
Okay.
All right, so the other thing that I'd like to know is that as a homeowner who is going to be tremendously impacted by a project of this magnitude, I just found out about this. I just saw them doing things and asked my neighbors, is there some mechanism that homeowners are notified about these sorts of things?
Yes.
Because I was not.
Yes. Normally there's a mechanism that the applicant sends out to all the surrounding homes, notification of what is going to be done. And further, with people, normally what planning requires is, especially when homes are nearby the developments, they're required to have what's called a buffer zone. And the buffer zone would give a space between residents, surrounding residents, and the development, so that they wouldn't have that great impact on surrounding residents.
Okay. All right, so I never got any such notification, and I would like to see what exactly my buffer zone is, and I would like someone to show me.
Right, so part of the process requires the applicant to put up and submit, first to put up a billboard. I don't know, you've seen billboards around. And on that billboard, but that happens at a certain point after the EIA. So when the billboard is up, the billboard then points you to the Planning and Development's website and the application number, and you put the application number to go on the website, and you can see the whole development process. The EIA would be on there. All of the development will be on there. All of the information that has come through. It's all fully public.
Okay. So can I say that that billboard was put up, I want to say in December, and it stayed up for about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, and it is no longer 2 weeks, and it is no longer there. So, and it was very, it was not very conspicuous. So, you know, we who live in the area had no.
In addition to the billboard, they also put an ad in the paper as well. So the requirements are 3.
Okay.
Billboard, ad in the paper, and on the website.
Okay.
And the billboard and the ad in the paper then point you to the website. So I take the point that it may not be in a conspicuous area, and we're looking to address that because I do appreciate that people do put things in non-conspicuous areas. But that is essentially what they do. Once they put the billboard up, they then send that to planning. Planning is notified that the billboard is up. There's a time requirement for them to have the billboard up. And a lot of developers just have it up for the time. I don't remember if it's 2 or 3 weeks. It's in that kind of time frame.
Okay.
From the time the billboard, the time has elapsed, so they prove it's up, then they take it down.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Cora Woodhead from Six Men's. This government seems more concerned about tourism than providing adequate drinking water to the residents of Six Men's and beyond. Can we have a date when we're going to be able to have drinking water coming from a tap that we actually pay for?
Thank you, ma'am, for the concern. I'm going to ask Barbados Water Authority to just bring everyone up to date as to the works that have been happening in the parish. I know that there's substantial work that's been being done, and still a lot more to be done as well because we have 100-year-old mains that have to be replaced. I'm not sure who's going to come. Yeah, okay. Good.
Alex, I feel Barbados Water Authority. What the first thing we ask is, what part of Six Men you live?
Same place as the development.
I can't hear you. The development? This is on the, by the Berean Church? Right. Now, basically, what we're doing in that area, you are getting water from Allendale and now from, you're getting water from Allendale and now from Villa Maria or the St. Joseph Hospital. Now, in recent times, the water has improved because I check it regularly. However, there are still some rusty pipes in that area because how that development occurred, it was a kind of uncontrolled development, so the mains are not laid to easily circulate the water. Previously, we were getting some discolored water.
Excuse me, in Colleton Gardens also, they don't have proper drinking water.
Colleton Gardens has improved, and we used to get quite a few complaints from there because we shift that from the Allendale system to the Villa Maria or the St. Joseph Hospital system, right? So it used to come down there and go across Half Moon Fort, so all that was getting those same problems. However, there are 2 things we are doing. We are replacing pipes. The Six Men's situation hasn't come yet. Colleton Gardens pipes don't need replacing because that is a pretty new development. The ones in the Six Men's development, there are some mains in there to be replaced. Also, presently, we are in the process of completing a system, a filtration system at the Allendale well. That work is well on the way. Almost, the site is almost completely finished, and we are assembling the filtration system at Bomiston. That will be transferred down there. We are talking about the time for completion for that work is about the beginning of June, right? So And across St. Lucie and St. Peter, what we will have is a series of mains replacements. Even into the Boscobel area, we've done some work up there, the Collins areas. So all those areas will benefit from that work that is happening at Allendale right now. So by the beginning of June, the problems at Allendale will be solved, but you will still have some problems with mains replacements that we are doing right now. Additionally, what we are doing, we're in the process of having to improve the water situation in the area and the storage, because one of the things that cause the problems in the area is the disruption in the system. If you have breakage, if you have an outage, there's not enough water, not enough storage, so therefore you have outages. So we're improving the storage. So like at places like Half Acre, we're improving the storage. So these things will alleviate those problems. But it will take some time. The mains replacement, we've done mains replacements through the north. So, but it will take a little time. The work at Allendale will be finished by June. But so the improvement, the first set of improvements that you saw earlier as we shift to Villa Maria, which is the St. Joseph Hospital, you will see further improvements by now and the beginning of June.
Not if the pipes aren't adequate. My next question is, when were the residents, this is to planning, of Six Men's informed in writing they were able to view the Pendry development plans in Six Men's? And do residents now have the ability to view the plans? Because from what you were saying earlier, it seems to be common practice that residents aren't informed.
Yes, absolutely. The residents do not recall if that particular application was under which legislation.
Sorry?
I don't recall which legislation that was under. I think that was under the legislation which means that they don't have to comply to the same rules as putting up the billboard and putting it on the website and so on. That application actually came in before the new legislation came in. So they're under slightly different legislation. But however, what I can do is, if once they're available, I can ask that those be put on the website so people can view them as well. So that is currently before us. They are going through some final stages, but I think that would be a nice development for the area.
So residents, what are you saying? Residents can actually view the plans at some point and put in objections?
Right. So residents that was under previous legislation. So under the current legislation, people have to put up a billboard and put it on a website. This particular application for Pendry does not fall under that legislation because it predated the legislation. So this one, I'm going to ask that it be put on the website so residents can go on the website and be able to see it as well.
Okay, thank you. And some of the residents of
and just to remind you, anyone can also go to planning and request the
I've done that.
And they weren't able to give it.
Well, they told me it was agreed in 2019 by the Prime Minister's office.
Right.
But they weren't willing to share it.
Well, I will ask that you can put it. I don't think it could be a difficulty to put it on the website because all of those become public documents.
Okay. Yeah. And some of the residents of Six Men's believe that the bridge at Port Ferdinand will be removed once the Pendry Development Hotel is in place.
Correct. That is not correct. The bridge will not be removed.
Okay. So this goes back to the plans. So to allay fears, could you give us a date when the plans will be available?
I will ask and make arrangements that it be on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Good night. My name is Sylvester Rock, 6 Main St. Peter. Following up on Alex's and my neighbor with the water, I think he's alluding to the rusty water, which has greatly improved, to be honest. But we're having a problem with bad smelling water where we cannot drink the water. We have to buy ice, buy water, and this is going on for years now. So that is the issue with the water in 6 Mains. Also, regarding Highway 1, I think you all tricked me because I was planning to come to talk about Gibbs Mullins Road, but you all started it last night because you know you're coming here tonight. Wanna trick me on that one. But I was wondering if any of the ministers in the north does travel Highway 1. Let me tell them. And also, thanks for starting it, and I hope it finished. But between Lower Carlton and Spikestown, in case there's an emergency or accident, the roads to divert then that will get you up to Highway 2A. And these roads being Gibbs, Mullins, Bakers, and even here by Worley, those roads are terrible. They need to be fixed. So that is one of my concerns there. So, the bridge at Port Ferdinand. I have an issue. I don't know if any other residents from St. Mary's here tonight have an issue also of the times that the bridge go up and come down. There's no set time. That bridge goes nilly-willy as they feel like. My husband was in sea morning, and in an hour's time, that bridge left 3 times. Wahoo went out, Cool Runners 4 went out, and there's a brown boat with 2 big balls that went out. 3 times that bridge left. In case there's an emergency to the north of that bridge, and emergency vehicles have to come down, tell me what will happen if that bridge is up. There should be I believe there should be a set time. Even 9 o'clock on the night, Cool Runners 4 coming back in, that bridge is up. So that is something that needs to be addressed. Also, Collington, St. Peter, going through the cut rock. You have to burn your lights once you get going up or coming down to get through that area. It is overgrown with bush, which needs to be cut so people can traverse that road safely. And also there's some big potholes also in that road. Regarding the milling and paving, is my suggestion, or former MP, Prime Minister, and Member of Parliament for St. Peter, whenever they had cases like that, there's you go through St. Mary's Village, and there's not a railroad, but a road that would take you back in case there's an accident. Or last week we had rough seas, and the water was coming all over the road in St. Mary's. So nobody want to drive through salt water. Normally what Mr. Arthur used to do, he would take that material and send it up in that road to patch up the holes so that in case like that, people can have an alternative road to get through. So I would suggest the MP, I don't know if you know the area very well, to go up through there, go and see what I'm speaking about. And also,
I put more on that road myself
okay, you need to
a couple years ago.
Put some more.
No, but what I'll say to you is that one of the agreements that we got from the folk at Pendry was that when the road that they've put now through what is the former Nikki Beach, the restaurant, when that is taken up, along with the material that comes up on the original road, that material is supposed to go in that same location that you're talking about. So that you drive up the village and go across and come out by the Berean Church.
Okay.
That,
right, that's what I'm talking
I
about.
know, but I'm the MP, so I know the area, even in spite of what the slight that you were using just now. But the material is supposed to go on that road, and they've promised both Senior Minister Duguay and myself that that is what will be done once they have pulled up. They've said to us the only thing that we're supposed to do is to make sure that the Ministry of Transport and Works they're going to truck it, but the spreading out, the ministry has to do, so government has a responsibility as well, but that is something that is going to be done.
Okay. Minister Abrams, I think 2 weeks ago or last week, I heard him mention in the House, somebody was speaking that he happened to travel on Highway 1 and a minibus. He could not get past a minibus. I remember, and this is something that we in the North experience daily. I remember when the government first came to power in 2018, you all were supposed to do something with those minibuses and these issues. And to me, it's gotten worse. I don't know if you all saw social media the past couple of days with those ZRs going through trees and blocking up the road and want to fight. And it's getting worse. I don't know. Simple, take away the permits. It's a simple issue, take away the permits. But you know why? Too many people in high places own these vans. That is the issue. That is the issue. That is the issue, and supporters of parties and so on. It must stop. They're inconveniencing everyone. They're ridiculous on the roads.
Yeah. I'll start and you can think.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for raising the latter point in relation to the vans. We have all seen the reckless behavior of a number of these permit holders, and certainly the owners as well who are responsible for these vehicles also have to bear some culpability as well. We would have, a few months ago, made some amendments to the regulations, to the legislation, which would have strengthened the powers of the Transport Authority, which has the oversight for the public service vehicles. But then we realized that there needed to be a tightening of the responsibilities of the owners, and that had been omitted from the initial draft. So what we actually did, we went back to Parliament 2 weeks ago, and it passed through the House for the amendment to be made. And we also had yesterday, I believe, the Senate also passed that. And just today, I reminded the Acting Attorney General that I want to get the bill proclaimed as quickly as possible, because I have ready and willing to go the actual approved regulations for the Transport Authority, which will allow the Transport Authority now to take the action that the public has been calling for. And just to say to you that the regulations have gone through almost 20-something different iterations. Since the Transport Authority legislation was put into place over 15 years ago, irrespective of the administration, no attempt had really been made to bring this to a point where we could regulate the sector. We are finally at the stage where that regulation can now take place. And I, like you, look forward to us being able to not only just identify through the videos, but equally to be able to bring these persons before the law courts, and also to be able to have those permits taken away, because they're endangering the lives of ordinary Barbadians.
Yes. Okay, and next question. Oh.
What I will, no problem. What I will tell you is, previously in the former government, there were a number of persons in that government who had interest in the public service vehicles. Some members of that government had a number of permits in their name or were controlling permits. I can assure you that nobody in cabinet, not in this cabinet, nobody in our cabinet has a permit or has an interest in any DPSVs. No one. So your fears about people in high places protecting, that is not existing in our cabinet. A lot of us are completely fed up. When you heard me, you would understand, right? Because what a lot of people don't realize, when the PSVs do what they did and you see in the videos, and they go off-route, even by a couple meters, right? The persons are not covered by the insurance. Once you go off-route and something happens, they're not covered, and people don't understand this. I've been a lawyer for too long. The general feeling across our entire cabinet is that this has to stop. There were issues with the legislation that prevented the proper enforcement. Those have been patched. The last of it went through the Senate yesterday. Santia sat down next to me at lunch today in cabinet and said to me, I need you to get this proclaimed as quickly as possible. I am going to try to get it proclaimed as quickly as possible, because we need to bring some order to our roads. The time of the lawlessness and anarchy must now be at an end, and there must be law and order and discipline on our roads. Our lives depend on it. The lives of our children catching it depend on it. The lives of innocent pedestrians depend on it. So I can assure you, there's nobody in our government protecting or encouraging or benefiting from this lawlessness. You have my word on that one.
Okay.
That is the difference between us and them.
Okay, this is what Minister Abrams again. In 2019, I think it was mentioned that the government was. In 2019, the government had spoke about issuing citizenship by descent for grandchildren of Barbadians. Last year at St. Lucy's speech, that was also raised. I remember the Prime Minister saying that it will be soon coming to fore. This is a year now. And can you give me some updates on that one?
Sure. That legislation is truly a case of measure twice or 3 or 4 times and cut once. Some issues arose recently that, quite frankly, we had to go back to the drawing board to make sure certain things were covered. I can't tell you what they are for certain reasons. That legislation is in its final stages. We had a completed piece of legislation. Some concerns, actually, look, I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you some. You've seen this thing about the whole birth tourism thing. People have seen those advertisements all over the world. Come to Barbados, right? Have your child get a Barbadian passport, right? Now, that is open to abuse. That was not, we have always had a thing in Barbados. If you were born in Barbados, you were a Barbadian citizen. Because of how that is being used, otherwise, we had situations where people have come to Barbados, big pregnant. We refuse to accept them in. And immediately on arriving at the airport, and immigration tell them, you cannot come in. They go into labor. They experience some difficulties, right? And a doctor will sign off saying that this person cannot travel. So the person then has to be taken in, and they promptly give birth. Or we have situations where people lie. You're not supposed to travel a certain time into your pregnancy. People will lie as to how pregnant they are, get here, and once again, as soon as you question them, they run into difficulties. They call a doctor. The doctor says they can't travel. And this has happened. We have gone back to deal with that issue as one of you. You're the first person who actually told us that, truthfully. Santi probably doesn't even know this.
Okay.
Right? But we've gone back to the drawing board to deal with that. And there's some other concerns that were raised that we've gone back to dealing with. I can tell you that it is in its tweaking stages right now. Right? And I fully expect, I told the Prime Minister, asked me, and I told her, Prime Minister, I really want, if all else fails, to bring this in before the end of this year. So that should be in by the end of this year. And when it comes in, you will have probably the most complete modern Immigration Act and citizenship legislation in the world, and you'll be happy.
Okay. Finally, I don't want to. The lights, traffic lights on highway to
You know what I mean, all right?
Westmoreland. I remember St. Lucy's speech. Dropping? St. Lucy's speech, someone had raised the issue about delays. Originally, I'm from St. James, Western Crit Hill, so I know that junction. Before those traffic lights were there, okay, persons could not get out from that junction. You would spend 15 minutes at that junction before you get to, or you have to take a chance to cross 2 lanes of traffic to get out. People must realize now the amount of cars on the road, and people leaving home at 7 o'clock to get work for 6:30. Any country during peak hours, there will be a delay in traffic. I have known persons who have lost their lives at that junction. Many accidents at that junction. So when people can complain about delays, let them wait. Okay, we about saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Roy?
Remain there. Before we start again, just a reminder, the procedure is, if you're planning to speak tonight, you need to go to the PMO desk, just give them some basic information, and from there you can then come back and take one of the chairs in the middle. All right, we're going to do a bit of a diversion at this moment. Please forgive me, the gentleman who is at the mic. You can come to the mic. There are at least 2 other persons, I believe, who are related to the Eden Grove project. Yeah. Please come to the mic at the same time if you've already gone to the desk. Okay. We're going to take all of Eden Grove at this time so we can deal with it once and for all as opposed to breaking up everything else. Okay. So once we finish Eden Grove, and you have been to the desk. If you haven't been to the desk yet, okay, fine. Yeah. So we'll take the 3 of you together and then go from there. So go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, good evening. My name is Mike Toy. I live in Gibbs in St. Peter. Objections to the gully, to the development in the gully, there are many. There's a couple of points I wanted to ask. You'd mentioned the environmental. Who conducts
environmental impact assessment is conducted by the applicant. So what happens is the planning department sets what the parameters must be that must be included in the environmental impact assessment. Those parameters are sent to the applicant. The applicant has an opportunity to accept or reject. If the applicant accepts, and they're normally very significant, the applicant accepts, and then they get permission then to carry out the environmental impact assessment. But the parameters of it is set by the Committee for Planning and Development.
All right, because I just wanted to read something from the PDP with regards to gullies. This is page 56. Just a couple of things. Gullies and escarpments. Okay. For all applications for major development within or proximate to gullies and escarpments, the following safety investigations will be required to the satisfaction of Director of Planning Development. So is he doing that? Or is he doing that to your satisfaction?
The applicant has to follow that,
right.
yes.
So all this stuff here, like just a couple of examples. Within 30 meters of gullies and escarpments, drainage plans will be required that assess and mitigate potential flooding upstream and downstream, etc. Within 50 meters of gullies, geotechnical and or biophysical studies will be required. Within 100 meters of the base of escarpments, geotechnical and biophysical studies. So he's going to do all of that?
All of that would have to be done. What happens, many times people build not in a gully, but close to gully.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is, gullies may have very little water or no water, but then when there's rain, they have a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is required and important is that a certain distance is set from the middle of the gully, and geotechnical work is essential to make sure that underneath, if they're going to do any building in that area, that it is sound, yes.
So, I mean, I'm assuming that he has to provide some credentials for the people that are doing these surveys, and at some point you guys would probably go and have a look, because otherwise he could just say, oh, we've done that and it's fine, here you go.
Yes, all of the surveys, after they're done, they're circulated to all the various agencies of government, and they check to make sure that they meet the standards that are necessary for all environmental impact assessments, geotechnical surveys, flows, and everything. And it's not only there, by the way, that is done for all developments near anything like that, including those done by government.
Okay, and again, just PDP quickly, further to this policy, required studies and all major development will consider the management objectives of the Integrated Gully Ecosystem Management Plan 2005, including minimizing the extent of habit modification and loss, conserving represented biodiversity, rare and sensitive species and habitats, encouraging sustainable land use practices on gully lands and adjacent lands, flood mitigation, promoting low impact passive recreational use, hiking and walking. Now, this man is planning to put 150 villas, a hotel, shops, restaurants, a bar. How on earth does that bear any resemblance to what's in the PDP and what they're suggesting?
Well, I'm sure that the environmental impact assessment will be able to answer those questions when we see it. But surely all of his site is not gully. He must have some areas that are flat. But we look forward to seeing the application.
Not many. All right. Sorry. Covenants. I was at a town planning meeting with the developer, and he was asked about covenants, and he said there are no covenants on any of that land. None of the 22 acres that he's proposing to build on apparently has a covenant. Now, everybody else that lives around there has a covenant. Now, town planning also say they don't concern themselves with covenants, but who does in that case?
Yeah, covenants do not fall under planning. It is a legal matter between the conveyors and who purchased the land. And that normally what happens in the development, and I think maybe the Attorney General is best to answer that, but it does not fall under the planning and development.
I understand that, but I guess really my question is, what is the point of having all these covenants if somebody can just decide they're going to...
So just to explain how...
Oh.
Okay, just to explain how the covenants go. They might not be broad-based covenants for a whole district. How covenants come about is if you have a piece of land and you are subdividing that land. When you subdivide that land, you make certain promises. And those come into the covenants from there that, I don't know, if you put in housing that people can't have more than 2 dogs and they can't hang things from the balcony or whatever, right? Those covenants follow through for the area to which they are applied. So that initial subdivision is going to have those covenants. The piece right next to it might be sold, owned by somebody else, subdivided, and they have a completely different set of covenants, right? So, or none. So the fact that you have covenants between 10 of you here does not mean that the person on the next side of the road is subject to the same covenants. You follow?
I do.
So the covenants flow from the original conveyance.
So, I mean, my covenant, for example, and this goes back to 1968 or 1958, and it appears to say that it's the same thing. You can't have more than 2 stories, etc. No pigs, dogs, chickens, etc., etc. But it also says that that is to be carried on, essentially, every time that property is sold, the covenant goes with it. So
correct. So those covenants will apply from that original conveyance all the way down to whoever the land or the property is transferred to. I'll tell you quite often, people start respecting covenants, but those covenants have nothing to do, the police don't enforce those covenants, town planning don't necessarily enforce the covenants. Those covenants are between the owners of the land, the ownership that was derived from the original subdivision. So if your neighbors are not obeying their covenant, it is actually the responsibility of all the rest of you to put your neighbors in court to enforce the covenants. Right? And quite a lot of people don't actually understand that those covenants are between all to whom the covenants exist. They don't touch and concern anybody else. So if you don't enforce the covenants, after a certain amount of time, to be quite frank, the covenants lapse. Because if the covenants are not enforced or nobody raises an issue, then it is deemed that the covenants are no longer relevant.
All right. Okay, that was that. And then last but not least, I'm assuming he would have to apply for a change of use because it's a residential area now. He wants to put a commercial development in there. Is that not a separate
If planning
thing?
permission was given for a certain purpose and you wish to use it for a purpose in addition to or contrary or opposite to what planning permission was given, then yes, you're supposed to apply for change of use.
Right. I mean, I didn't. There's on the Rock Dundo Hill just up from me. There's a big sign up there. I think William Solar put it up there, notifying that they applied for a change of use. But there was nothing on this development about change of use. And I thought they were 2 separate things.
As I understand legislation, once the permission is given for development, if the permission is given, the change of use will be implied in that.
So that doesn't
have
have
it would be one application which should include both.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Stanton. I'm at Gibbs in St. Peter. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to bring up Eden Grove, but before I do that, I want to bring up something pleasant, which is I want to thank the government for the work on Rock Dundo Road, which is beautiful. And we look forward to the completion of the work just started on Gibbs Hill Road. I also want to say the waterworks that were included in that road work have really improved the water quality in the neighborhood. So that's on the positive side. Getting to Eden Grove, I don't need to repeat everything that's been said. I'd like to bring up 2 points of fact that were addressed. One was on phase 1, had work begun. My wife and I have been in residence on the ridge overlooking the area we're talking about for over 10 years, and not once during that time have we ever witnessed anything more than a goat shed being built on the property in question. So I understand there's a certificate. You may want to look into the facts behind the certificate. That's one thing. The other thing is, I'm very pleased to hear that an extensive environmental study is required, and I think the process you've outlined is a very good one. One of the things you said that was encouraging was that a thorough study of the flora and fauna had to be, existing flora and fauna had to be undertaken. Unfortunately, over the last 3 weeks, The flora has been bulldozed in the phase 1 and phase 2 areas. So there is no existing flora anymore to study. Moving outside of considerations that are the area appropriate for planning, I'd like the government to consider broader political and legislative authorities it might have to consider one or two other items. One, the drastic change in use from a quiet residential neighborhood to something that would actually destroy those neighborhoods. And two, I don't think anyone here wants to see a repeat of the Four Seasons project under the previous government, which took a beautiful piece of property, a beautiful resource to Barbados. It was abandoned, and it's a ruin today. And I hope this government can address that issue. In this case, I do think within the proper authority of this government, it's fair to ask, is this a viable project, or is it one that presents a substantial risk of abandonment or incompletion? And perhaps the government should consider requiring a completion bond as a condition of any permission given to prevent that sort of outcome. As far as it's an unusual thing to think about a luxury hotel inland. It's an unusual thing to think that there is a viable need for retail when we already have saturation in the retail space. And as one senator recently noted in some comments in the newspaper, there's a high vacancy rate in luxury property in Barbados. And we think this project represents a substantial risk of non-completion. And we believe there are probably authorities within the government's legislation to address those issues and address those risks. Thank you.
Just let me thank you, and obviously we will, when it comes to an investor making an investment, we look first from the planning point of view. Whether the viability of it, that's not really remit of the planning department, but I would hope that an investor who would invest time, effort, and money in getting a planning approval, going through an environmental impact assessment, and all of the assessments required, is not a simple process and not a cheap process. But I take your points. Thank you.
Good night. Roselle McLean, Mullin, St. Peter, so phase 1 of the Eden Grove development. My property is on the boundary of the developers, so similar to Heather who spoke earlier. I'm concerned about flooding, noise, privacy, and as you mentioned, there has been no buffer zone and no notification of comms to residents. So one of my main questions, the developer hasn't done quite a few of the things that you mentioned he should be doing. So who is holding the developer accountable for putting in stuff like a buffer zone? Whenever that construction starts, I would not be able to work. I will completely lose my privacy because of workers. There's a fence he talked about putting, so he talks a lot, but there's little action. Who's holding him accountable for putting in stuff like buffer zones, for giving us notification of comms? It is only when we went and attended the town and country planning meeting after begging to see plans did he grudgingly give us those plans. So he's obviously not following, rules. Who's holding him accountable? How do I know when that construction starts? I will have to move out of my own home. I will not be able to live there.
So once a person gets approval, let me be clear, the person does not yet have approval. But once a person gets approval, that approval will include all of the things that we just spoke about, whether it be buffer zones, respecting the gully, doing the environmental impact assessments, doing the geotechnical survey, all of those kinds of things. Then at the end of construction, there's something called a certificate of compliance, which means that the developer has complied and done what he said that he would do. If he does not get certificate of compliance, it means that his development will not be able to proceed because the certificate of compliance is a necessary requirement for any mortgages, for opportunities for the hotel to operate, all those kinds of things. So planning and development issues the certificate of compliance, and he must comply with what he said that he was going to do and got approval for.
Okay, well, I hope that is the case because he
That
has
is definitely the case.
Okay, he has another development 2 streets down on Mullins, and there's another neighbor who is having an absolute nightmare with his property, with workers. There's no buffer zone, and I feel like, you know, my heart goes out to her because she's having an absolute nightmare with the same developer, and I just pray that I don't, you know, experience same with him. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, William, one of the things that we may have to do, good night, everyone, and I apologize for being late. I think the others may have told you I was addressing the Barbados Nurses Association annual general meeting straight from Cabinet. So the others will tell you that I am in the same clothes as this morning, so please excuse me. I think that what I'm hearing you say, Madam, more relates not so much to the fact of the compliance, but the fact of complying during construction. And that is slightly different from what you are speaking to with the certificate of compliance. And it may well be that you may have to put conditions in during construction that are capable of being enforced in a clear way, rather than just simply those things that attach to the end of the completion of the process, which will more affect anybody's access to financing, or if there's a mortgage or whatever, that the certificate of compliance becomes absolutely critical at that point in time. So I think that, look, we are living in a country where we have to learn to share better the spaces that we live in. And it therefore means communication, and it therefore means respect. And that is what we're hearing from all of you. We're not ever going to be able to pause development fully, but we are going to have to be able to listen and to engage with persons and to see how best we can balance the right to development and the right to stay where people are. So it is going to be critical. That's why we have these meetings. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't know how you feel. You wouldn't be in a position to express it as clearly as you have. But by the same token, too, we need also to recognize that development is necessary in order to ensure that we don't find ourselves ultimately, again, on the verge of devaluation or the other things that would have diminished the quality of life elsewhere in the country. So we hear you loud and clear, and I'm sure that Minister Duguid is going to do what has to be done. Who's next?
Good evening to everyone. Good evening to the panel and the audience. My name is Carol, and I live in Fort Hill Development.
Last name, please.
Gilkes, Gilkes. We live in the Fort Hill Development, and despite the fact that we have had some relief with the roads in Fort Hill, from the Rock going through to Sailor Gully and the surrounding areas, are deplorable. I have lost 3 tires because I am a driver at night, and I have lost 3 tires with these said roads. Honestly, I can't tell you which pothole to drop into or which one to avoid. Seriously, it is seriously a hassle. You know, and we do respect the fact that, you know, a couple of days ago, some of the holes were patched, but we would like to see, you know, completion. Right? So that's my main concern. The other concern, I know that you would have addressed the lights, the stop lights by Westmoreland. Has the timing on that been, it has been changed? Oh, okay.
Yes, the lights have been adjusted.
They have been?
Yes, they have, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
just to your first comment in relation to the road at Fort Hill, I'd mentioned earlier Fort Hill to the junction by Prospect and into Indian Ground. That is all being done under compliance, and we're at the stage now where we should be able to go to bill of quantities and very shortly be able to start the works in those areas.
So just one more question. As it relates to the damages on with my tires, is there usually any compensation?
Yeah, there is a process through the Ministry of Transport and Works where you can provide a copy of the damage to the vehicle, send an email to the ministry, and the claim will be considered, and then they will respond to you in terms of settlement of the claim.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I can share that information with you at the end if you wish. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sheila Watts Clark. I would like to talk about the drinking water in the WIM, St. Peter. My grandparents, they live down there, and we always have to buy bottled water for them. We're unable to wash their clothes down there. It is awful. Waterworks usually comes and digs up the road or what's not, and they don't fix back the roads. So it's also a hassle to get between the small roads in the WIM. The roads in the WIM are also very bad. Coming from Fort Hill to the WIM, given that the roads in Fort Hill are also bad, and to the WIM, it's always a hassle. It's very uncomfortable driving in the buses. Yeah, that's my concern.
What about buses?
Again, just to indicate that is part of the compliant project. And as I said earlier, the challenge with the Scotland district, of which St. Peter falls within the Scotland district, is the nature of the soil. So it's not a straightforward mill and pave that we can do. Under the mill and pave program, you would realize that those are roads which are relatively straightforward. But the Scotland district project is requiring us to do a lot of geological testing, a lot of designs to make sure that we get it right in terms of starting the actual rehabilitation. So I can tell you, your MP has been in my ears and in the Prime Minister's ears on a number of the roads in St. Peter. And that is why we have started the process of addressing the parish of St. Peter in particular, despite the fact that, as I said, he will tell me that some of the roads that we've started are not specifically in his constituency, but I can assure you that they are within the parish of St. Peter, and we're working on the priority list to be able to address a lot of the concerns that have been raised by residents.
Thank you.
Hi, good night, members of the High Table. My name is Peter Rochester. I'm from Blackbess. And there are a number of things that I really want to address or speak to tonight. Before I start or get into them, I recognize that the Deputy Prime Minister said earlier that Blackbess, the road to Blackbess, was being assessed. And I'm hopeful, I'm very hopeful that it will be there will be an execution plan to repair that road. I don't know if it's just going to be milling and paving or what sort of extension is going to happen, but there are certain things regarding to that road that I would also like to suggest. But before I get into that, I noticed, I don't think you might have mentioned, and I speak on the correction, the bridge at Worley, and as to whether that was being addressed, and when that will be addressed. And I said that to say because when I came in, I noticed on the screen, and I tried to read correctly, extensive patching on the Worley Road. Ma'am, by my count, that road was visited over 7 times to be patched. And right now, I would put that road in what I call a usable state. But for the time that, and the amount of time that has been addressed or tried to be patched, it's my opinion that that road should have been paved fully. It is still bad. There's still a lot of holes in that road. Additionally, there was the cleaning of the road edge on Highway 2A. That brings me back to another problem. Have you noticed the amount of vines, bush, trees, etc., that are bordering our highways? I have never in my lifetime seen so many vines, we're called climbing utility poles on the wires, etc. I mean, yes, if we become, I don't know, I don't know the right word to say, but that's something I need to address. It looks bad. Regards to the road to Blackbess, you said that the assessment was done for the junction from Black Bess, from the Highway 28 to Black Bess. One, in regards to that junction, to me, I consider that bend coming to that junction to be a high speed bend. And why I say that, because on a number of occasions, people either coming out of that road or even turning off the highway to go that road had to more or less pull aside for their life because of traffic coming around that bend and people trying to pass out cars in that corner. I had the unfortunate incident time of witnessing a smash up at that corner. I was only thankful that nobody was killed in that smash up. There's a person coming out from the Haymans Junction, trying to cross the road, and a car coming around from my quarter side, passing out another car in that area, and the two of them colliding. So something needs to be done in regards to that, especially for persons coming out from there, the visibility coming out from here. If you're coming out from the Black Bess Junction, there is a utility pole on your left that kind of impede your vision for traffic coming from Rock down the side. And then the corner, because of the speed of the vehicle coming around that corner, that can cause persons sometimes to be very fearful in coming out from that junction. So something I am suggesting, I'm asking that something to be done in regards to that area. Additionally, in terms of the clearing of the road's edge, one of the things that I've always said to myself is that what we've created is allowed roads to become what we call levees during rain time. Because of the silt deposit on the side of what's supposed to be the shoulders of the road, they build up over a period of time. And therefore, when the rain is falling heavily, the water is flowing, the water does not go into the, what we call the, pardon? The edges or the drainage areas. It flows on the road. So something needs to be done. But what I'm also asking is that in looking at this and trying to address that we should look at creating a proper shoulder or walk path on the side of the road for those persons, because we are trying to encourage people to be healthy, to walk, to run on the side of the roads. Create a proper shoulder or walk path on the side of the roads, especially from Rockdundee to Worley, so that people can use that as an exercise path safely on evenings. And I will point you to the road, the Haywards Road. It may not be perfect, the Haywards Road. It may not be perfect, but it has two reasonable shoulders on both sides of the road. So you can walk, persons can walk and exercise comfortably on the side of the road. Use that as an example, and I would like to see that happen both on Highway 2, and if I could beg your indulgence, also in terms of the reassessment and the redevelopment of the road to Black Bess, if you could create such a pathway for persons to walk safely or exercise safely, not only from the highway, but also through the village. Because we must recognize that as more and more vehicles travel on the road, people find that sometimes they have to kind of come back with the vehicles for space and walk in. But if you could create a reasonable pathway on the side of the road, that will alleviate the problem, or at least give people a little sense of comfort and security when they're walking on the side of the roads. Now, a person made a comment to me recently when they were visiting the area. I'm a born and bred Black Bess man. I've traveled extensively during my work time. I'm currently retired. So one of the things I do is try to get up and go walking, trying to, keep myself fit or get a certain sort of way. I tell people that I go walking normally in my backyard, but unfortunately my backyard has become overrun with overgrown vegetation, bush, and the famous Barbados brown beans. A plantation, and I will try not to mention the name, but you know where I'm from. Plantation that once used to be very productive is now simply a wasteland. And all the areas surrounding the village itself is just dotted with overgrown bush, etc. was persons, I know at one point in time it was supposed to be a change of use where Holiday Village was supposed to be developed out there. This is over close about 3 decades ago. Nothing has happened. I don't know what is the current plans, if there are any plans towards the development of that area. But in the meantime, I have people in the area who are crying out for house spots. I can't get any. I know under the previous administration of the Honorable Owen Seymour Atte, there were plans for development of house spots in the area. And this was way back in 1994. Nothing has happened since then. So as part of the whole cry for the people from my area, one for the road and also for house spots and also for the development of the area which used to be the formerly Best School, develop it as something functional for the community. Transportation is another thing that I also would like to address. I welcome the fact that the government incorporated ZRs and minibuses into the TAP program. But it boggles my mind as to why conceivably you can schedule a ZR to run the Rock Hall Road, which is Highway 2A from town to Rock Hall, which is one of the longest roads. Why I ask that, and I know persons may say, okay, well, during the off-road, and this is something during the day, during the off-peak time, you may say, okay, yes, you don't want to send one of the bigger buses, but a ZR. I had the experience one day of deciding, I took my car to the garage to get a service. So I said, okay, fine. I had the option of being picked up from home, but I said, no, I want to drive in one of our new spanking electric buses. So I'm going to catch a bus to go into town. Yes, one electric buses went up, but that bus was coming back to Spikestown. And surprisingly, the bus that was scheduled, or the vehicle that was scheduled for that time, this is around 2 o'clock, was a ZR. The ZR left Rock Hall and got a black bus. There were about 6 people in the ZR. The persons that got in the black bus and then in Bakers, it was full. So on that drive from there on, it was like nobody, it could not pick up anybody else. It's a long haul road. Why would a ZR be assigned to travel on that road? To me, it begs the question in terms of scheduling. For a ZR to be on that road. I'm not going to hit ZR. I know persons are talking about the ZRs, etc., and the issues surrounding them, but my whole thing is about the number of people that can be accommodated at that time. Because if you go on long haul road, obviously you can be picking up persons along the way. But you send a vehicle that can only pick up persons from 3 bus stops and then that's it. And that follow through on persons. I remember there was a time when I had heard some person do some remedial work on me and expecting them to turn up early, but they turned up only at 10 o'clock because they said that was the problem. They were waiting to catch a bus coming to Rock Hall. But unfortunately, the buses, the vehicle that was coming on that road was ZRs, and from the time they left, the Eagle Hall, they were full. So they had to wait for another 2 hours for a bus. So that is one of the things that I'm asking you to please look into. Pardon? Oh, sorry. My colleague told me that I should give you time to respond.
Okay, so let's go back to one of the first points you made in relation to Worley and Farm Road. Worley is actually on the list. We did do some patching, again, as a temporary measure. I don't know if people understand, but we have a long list of roads that are the wish list for each constituency. And then we have to make the assessments, particularly for the mill and pave, as to whether, what's the nature of the works that have to be done. Are we going to have interference from the utilities? How long is it going to take before we can actually get to actually milling and paving the roads? So the decisions that we're taking right now on this particular program really relates to whether the road is going to require limited intervention by the utilities, and in a sense, if it can be a quick fix in terms of the paving. So when we looked at the Worley Road, again, the decision was taken while we're going to do Highway 1 and we were doing a number of the other areas in the Speightstown area and generally in St. Peter, to get to the other parts of the country. And in fairness, while we have focused a lot on the north of the island, and Prime Minister will tell you we're doing a tour tomorrow, and I was saying to her that we haven't really gotten into the Christchurch and the St. Philip and certainly the St. Michael areas, because the last few weeks have been spent on St. Peter, St. Thomas, St. James, not even St. John, parts of St. George. The focus has really been in this part of the country because it has been neglected for so long. So put simply, Worley was focused at this point on the pothole patching as a temporary measure to be able to come back at it once we are able to touch at least each of the 30 parishes with at least some level of work for the other residents as well. It's really a case of priorities. And as I said, I know everybody has their own priorities, but we're also trying to prioritize to be able to ease some of the pressure in key areas, and particularly areas that are access roads to highly trafficked areas across the country as well. The Farm Road bridge, the challenge that we're having there is that has to be outsourced because the work is a bit more complex in terms of what has to be done. And so a decision has been taken to take that outside of the ministry and instead to project that for independent contractors to be able to weigh in. Now, at this point, I think you can appreciate we have two of our major contractors are actually heavily involved in the Mill and Pave program. So again, we are trying to juggle in this dry period to spread as much of the works and the repair program as we possibly can over the next few months. You mentioned the routes. We are looking at the route rationalization across all of the routes as the Barbados Mass Transit Authority will come into play over the next few months. The intention is that we hear from the public what are the concerns in terms of new developments that have arisen, new routes that they would like to see, and be able to allow that information to inform a better allocation of roads across the country. And the truth is, from many of the parish speaks, we've actually been able to make some adjustments to the allocation of public service vehicles on the roads. There's still some tweaking to be done, but at least that process has started in terms of rationalizing the routes and certainly the permits as well that are allocated to persons across the country as well. So I hope that clarifies a few of the things you've raised.
I appreciate your candor and your response, madam. Just kind of a digress. I know earlier.
Just hold, because there were some other issues that you raised relating to the bush and plantation. Thank you.
Right. So, in addition to what the Deputy Prime Minister was saying, we are also bringing legislation very shortly, and that legislation will take into account plantations and making sure that their verges are maintained so that wouldn't have that amount of overgrown. And I do appreciate what you're saying. Sometimes you have vegetation encompassing into the road and taking up part of the road, and therefore it has an effect on the traffic and so on. But legislation will be coming to Parliament very shortly to be able to deal with all plantations who have areas that they must maintain their verge. And then respective residential people must maintain their open lots to a certain standard as well. So we're bringing legislation for that very, very shortly.
Yeah, because one of the things that I have always smiled about, and I know one of your colleagues in the cabinet have always been in the forefront of saying that we need to plant more trees in Barbados. From my vantage point, when I go and I go on what I call it on my cliff and overlook, one of the things that I dislike seeing is the amount of what I call Barbados brown beans in abundance, vines in abundance. But I also see a lot of bush, a lot of trees, etc. So I always kind of wonder, we have so many trees. Is it the case that they are not where they should be located? Because if you drive across the breadth of the lake for St. Peter, etc., you see an abundance of trees. Sometimes an abundance of bush are overgrown the areas also. But my major concern is all round bees. And this is at the time where they become a nuisance in themselves.
I think you raised the issue as well. William, please address it, because I know we have others here to speak as well.
And the other issue
about the housing areas that you thought were done.
Right. The other issue you raised was the plot of land at Black Bess, which we call the Bacasa development. That was the name. And that has a planning permission. I'm not sure whether it's still a valid planning permission, but it did have a planning permission for an inland hotel and for a golf course in that region. But what has happened is the developer never followed through. I'm not sure whether it's still valid or if it's not valid, but certainly the change of use would have gone through because it did have a permission for a hotel and a golf course, I believe it was.
Hotel, golf course, there was also a redirection of the road, and also I think part of the town hall meeting that I attended, there was also hopeful that there will be some house developments in the area.
Did not follow through.
All right, in the interest of time, because I know I've sent the document forward for a number of things to address, etc. The one thing that I would also mention at this point in time in terms of sports, in terms of playfield and their need of maintenance upgrading playfields. One of the things that I would also suggest, and I know the Prime Minister had also mentioned the whole fact of the probably development of mini stadium across the lake and breadth of Barbados. I feel, and I would strongly suggest, that there is a need for what I call a proper mini stadium in the Spikesville area to service the north. And that has come out recently where they recognize that the Usain Bolt facility is the track cannot be used, the stadium cannot be used, and I'm not sure where it is well built. But I feel in order for the development of sports and also to cultivate a culture of excellent sports, that we need a proper stadium that can be used for netball, football, track and field, amongst other things. I would also suggest a swimming pool.
You're pushing an open door. You're pushing an open door. And the truth is that Sports Council had an offer which they did not move on fast enough with respect to a swimming pool at Clinkets, Half Moon. And I've asked them, please, in fairness to them, it came during COVID, but work still needed to be done. With respect to the bleachers, my understanding is, where's Sports Council? Are they here tonight? Yeah. Come forward, Neil. When are the bleachers coming, please? Mr. Merle? Good night, sir.
Good night, everyone. The bleachers are coming, the first set on February 27th.
February 27th.
Yeah.
So, and the second set, how many? Because we've agreed that we would expand them.
Yeah, about 2 sets. I think one is going into manufacturing production now.
Mhm.
So then the other set will come just.
So how many
probably
we
2 months out.
expecting overall in this first?
The first set is about
50.
50 sets of bleachers.
Yeah, but each bleacher holds how much? The 50 don't mean nothing to nobody.
Each bleacher holds between 500 and 1,000.
But that's the whole point.
Yeah.
So depending on the particular bleachers, what you're talking is accommodating significant numbers of persons.
Sure.
And while we will allocate them across 10, 12 grounds initially, they can move if there's a special event at a particular facility. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the second part of it, sir, is supposed to be the fencing and the landscaping, correct?
Correct.
So that we balls on the outside going out for the fencing, Bougainvillea and Pittsburgh or Neem or something so that the fence doesn't break down and don't have to be replaced every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, correct?
Yeah, and we started that project.
And the reason the fencing is important is to allow those grounds that have the fencing to be able then to have communities have games that they can charge a little entrance fee and offset what they're doing. Is this correct?
Correct, ma'am.
Thank you.
Correct. And just to say, we've started.
And if you find in areas like St. Philip or the north, particularly larger grounds, we are more than prepared to put in a little more than just mobile bleachers.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure we can work with the MP for the area to find that ground field.
I think you mean MPs for the north, so that it is not going to be assumed it is not going to be assumed that it is only St. Peter, because the last time I checked, you have St. James, 3 constituencies, and St. Lucie, St. Joseph, and St. Andrew. So you have a compelling case in terms of the transport. So I will allow you to continue to make that compelling case.
Thank you, ma'am. Just a final, just a comment. I think the Deputy Prime Minister did say that the timing system at the traffic lights of Westmoreland has been changed. I'm hoping that there has been a follow-up to see if there is what I call a reasonable flow of traffic. I hear and I appreciate persons talk about the junction and how dangerous the junction was, because I've had the opportunity the Saturdays either going to St. Silas or coming from Westmoreland and try to get to that area, know how sometimes it can be. But what I found was rather disconcerting is the fact that when you put in the lights, which was address one problem, it created another problem, and there was no follow-up on that. There was a running joke in which Sundays coming home one evening, I find it was easier to, when I get to the Lancaster roundabout, to go through Orange Hill, come down Orange Hill, and get through the lights before persons can actually traverse that section from Lancaster to the lights. I've had issues where coming out of Black Bess, you had to be in traffic waiting for something for something like 20, 25 minutes to get to the lights. So it was not really an issue of the fact that we didn't appreciate that the lights was put in there for a particular reason. It was a backup that was caused, that in delay of traffic was causing. So I hope, in terms that there has been a follow-up to see how that timing system is working and how effective it can be. I thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jill.
Prime Minister, Member of Parliament, Colin Jordan, other members of the head table, a very pleasant good night to you all. My name is Frank Jills. I am originally born and raised in Six Mains, presently living at Maynards in St. Peter. Before I get to the meat of the matter of what I come to speak about, which will be Six Mains issues, I just want to make a preamble statement and say that to those persons who would say to Barbadians that democracy in this country is under threat, I want to say that tonight I feel comfortable that democracy is active in Barbados. Because when my father, who was a very active community person in St. Peter, was alive and active, I don't recall any time when he would have gotten up and addressed members of the cabinet of Barbados, headed by the Prime Minister, at a meeting, a forum like this, where you could express freely your views and your concerns. So those persons who say democracy is on the threat, I think they need to take a back step and examine what they're saying, because I feel proud tonight that I'm here addressing members of the Barbados cabinet, headed by Prime Minister. Now, I'm not a great speaker, but I have some competence when it comes to writing. So this evening, as I sat at home thinking about what I want to say in connection with Six Mains, which is my main concern, I decided to go on my computer and just type out what I want to say. And I would like to, after this also, to present a copy of it to the Prime Minister and a copy to the MP as well. The people of Six Mains continue to feel a sense of abandonment as the land settlement issue drags on. This contentious matter has been ongoing for over 50 years now. And yes, I am aware of the several attempts by government, and especially our present MP, to bring closure to this situation. But the residents of Six Mains have held faith for a very long time and need to hear from government what plans there are for Six Mains in making sure that they have security of tenure so that those who wish to can affect further improvements to their homes. Apart from the land issue, there is a matter of serious beach erosion, and the sea is now washing over the road. Sometimes the amount of sand deposited in the road makes it impossible to tell where the beach ends and the road begins. We are still in the October to March maritime winter, and it is especially during this time that the most destructive swells, north swells, impact the northwestern coastline. We would like to see, as a matter of urgency, the intervention of the necessary government agencies to help stem off the further deterioration of our beach at 6 Mains. After securing our beach, we need to pay some serious attention to the facilities for fish vending and other forms of vending, especially related to the fishing industry, as the present setup would not meet international phytosanitary standards. Weekend as well as midweek entertainment has become a staple at 6 Mains. A visit to Jones Snacket and Bar on Wednesday night usually involves mingling with visitors to our shores from all over the world and listening to the sweet rhythms of Ricky Bain on the steel pan. Every last and first weekend in the month, there is karaoke, either at Jones, Paula, Brady, or Nita, just around the corner. Still more entertainment will be coming as we look forward to Sippin Lake Beach Bar reopening soon. That's the beach bar on the beach side. I said all that not simply to advertise the bars of 6 Mains, but to demonstrate that there is economic activity of a positive and developmental nature taking place. But we need government to commit to building out the area in accordance with the activities already taking place there. Plans are already on the way to hosting Fisherman's Day the last weekend in June. And we are already looking at making it even bigger and better in 2025 when we invite Bajans from the diaspora to gather once again. I hope that by 2025, 6 Mains would not look like it does now, and the facilities will be much enhanced with all the modern amenities. Madam Prime Minister, parliamentary representative, and other members of the head table, I am confident that you will do your utmost best to see that these concerns are addressed in short order. And I know, Prime Minister, that with you leading the fight internationally to bring attention to the devastating effects of climate change, what is happening at 6 Mains must make your priority list. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jokes. Let me also say to you, you know how I feel. When people tell me that we don't know what it is to be living in a climate crisis, I carry them to 6 Mains. See, the Minister Duguid and others know that we have been working assiduously on trying to solve a problem that for 40-something years has not been solved. It is not easy. Having said that, we're satisfied that we will continue because there are too many houses, over 200 houses, 200 people living up in there, Colin, in the back, and you're absolutely correct. The people do not have security of tenure. This government is addressing the issue in Bell, it's addressing the issue in Bellevue, it's addressing the issue in Bailey's Alley. It will address the issue in 6 Mains too. As it relates to the vending area, only today, Cabinet addressed the issue of having to deal with the Oystons because of the conditions there as well. And Oystons is much larger than 6 Mains. We will have to find a suitable way of addressing 6 Mains, but 6 Mains is more complicated for the very reason that you just said. I was actually trying to bring up on my computer, the phone is a computer nowadays, the cabinet papers from today, because we do have a program with the IDB that will address a number of beaches here in the north. I'm not sure, that's the point, I'm not sure that Six Men's was in there. And therefore, the cabinet heard me say today very clearly that I am of the view that without prejudice to what we do with the Inter-American Development Bank, that we may have to investigate getting a dredge and a barge to be able to work continuously, because the government cannot continue to have this piecemeal approach. And quite frankly, when we outsource it to the private sector, the prices at which we're paying, which is what has happened for 40 years, is much higher than if we trained a crew, had the crew attached to the Port Authority, and had the port responsible for the barge and the dredger working day in and day out. Because when we finish with the West Coast, nobody don't talk about the East Coast, you know. But the East Coast got the same problems, and it has become worse. So if you talk to coastal zone, Barbados has at least 6-7 years of serious beach work to do across the entire country. Okay? So it is a little too early. The government has, and I said it earlier tonight at the Nurses Association, our major priorities now, for the first time since coming to office, we are getting the opportunity to be able to deal with education and health in a serious way. The first 19 months of this government was spent in dealing with debt restructuring, because Barbados was the third most indebted country, debt to GDP ratio in the world. When the debt restructuring finished in December 2019, what happened in January 2020? COVID. And we spent the better part of 3 years dealing with that, down to the fact of having to deal with 52,000 people unemployed, drawing from the Unemployment Benefit Fund, and then introducing business interruption benefits for self-employed people that never existed before, and I can go on and on. This country has made its way for all of us by reason of its investment in education and health. On the other hand, and people ask, Prime Minister, why are you doing this? And we're talking, and you always out there talking. Where does the road hit? The rubber hit the road. Water, coastal erosion. Every so often, we will get a storm, a hurricane. And I hope that we will not get one in a hurry again, because the one that went over us in 2 hours caused real damage and cost us about 1.5% of GDP, or over $150 million in infrastructural losses and development. I say this because if we are to continue to spend money on both people and environment, or people and planet, as we say for alliteration, you are a writer, then it means that we have to, one, yes, grow the pie, but two, for every dollar that we spend to protect us against the climate is $7 that we save in damage. So it is in our interest, and we just have to wait. There's some little uncertainty on a few things because we're not living in a stable world. But so long as the government can find its way to do it, you can rest assured that they're going to have to explain to us how Sand Street is in, how Clinkets is in, and everything else. And we've left out, thank you, William, Clinkets is in, Mullins is in, Sand Street is in, Oystons Christchurch is in, and then, of course, the development of the headlands and groins and walkways between St. Lawrence Gap and Rockley Beach. You don't have to defend,
Prime Minister, I
because the difference is that I help walk in 6 months.
Yes.
And when I walk somewhere, I don't forget it. So you don't have to
I'm-
come and defend.
And I'm sure that if I took you where and show you where I was born, because our house was on the beach, and I was born home. So I'm one of the few persons who was actually born in 6 months. And where my mother's bedroom was at the time is now, if I go there, the water is reaching me to my knee.
Right, and that's the exact story that the others have told me. They tell me that below where the houses were, the fellas used to play cricket.
Yes.
On the beach.
No,
You can't even know.
It has actually changed. It has actually changed the whole culture of that coastal line.
Yeah.
Because I grew up playing beach cricket. You don't
Yeah.
see beach cricket being played anymore.
Exactly.
You understand? About volleyball on the beach. You
No,
don't see it.
The fellas told me that when I went down
You
there.
don't see
too.
it.
So that's why I am working hard to try to see how I can find the funds. As recent as when we were in the Netherlands this week, meeting with some, because as you know, they were fighting the climate crisis from the 17th century. You understand? Not now. Climate get popular now, but they, because of their topography and all of the water and everything, and they're prone to being flooded badly. So we have been talking to see how best, without prejudice to what we do with the Inter-American Development Bank. So I'm very pretty, we've done it for the last 40 years. But I believe that the time has come for us to develop our own internal capacity on an ongoing basis, because this is the world in which we live now. And I want to be able to find the people who can do this ongoing, to get the equipment, whether it is the equipment for the ocean, the barge, the dredger, or whether it is the bulldozers and the other things that are necessary. Half the problem that we're going to have, quite frankly, is because the West Coast is so densely populated, it will be the points at which the equipment can access the beach. And therefore, you're going to have to possibly even look at it coming in from the seaward end in some instances, because it may not be able to access it from the land side. So, look, this and water is as critical as roads in terms of infrastructure and drainage, because the climate is hitting Sante and the Ministry of Public Works. And everybody, I hear people, you know, but how many people can sit down and admit that between the end of August and end of December, how many days you had straight without rain? Come, anybody? That's the problem. So that it means now, and there's some people who are upset, oh, the equipment working too late. The noise too much. You can't have it both ways. So that it means that when the sun is shining, you got to make hay. This is the dry season. That's why they're working 12 and 14. And in some areas, quite frankly, 16 and 18 hours, particularly like when they were up in Prout and up that side where nobody ain't living, the companies were working flat out. That's the truth. Because we're going to have to do a lot of the work in the dry season to compensate for the fact that we don't know what the rainy season can bring. If it is not raining, great. We get double. But we can't plan anymore for simply the rainy season year round. So I hear you, Frank, and we're going to work on this collectively, because, and this makes it, because of the example of 6 Men's, it means that we can continue to make a case to give us more elbow room and more fiscal space and more grant funding in order to be able to resolve it. But the big issue in 6 Men's, has to be the resolution of the land issue first and foremost. The government will do what it has to do with respect to the coastal erosion.
I just want to say, Prime Minister, before you go, I just want to say that the issue of 6 Men's has been so important to me, and also shared by my brother, that we have done 2 things in terms of, because we see 6 Men's not disappearing physically, and I hope that don't ever happen, but disappearing in terms of the culture of the area. And one of the things that we did to help to preserve that memory of the culture is that we produced the first documentary was produced on 6 Men's, in conjunction with Board House Productions, Dr. Miller, and myself. And then a year and a half ago, my brother and I published a collection of poems entitled Seawater and Sand, which sort of chronicles our work that we wrote, inspired by the culture of the coastline and the fishing village. And it captures that culture that is now missing in Barbados. Right? So I just wanted to put that there. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and rest assured that some things take a little longer than others, but in no way is our commitment in any way diminished on resolving this wrong thing to make it right. Please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We have 5 persons in the seats ahead of me, but we have 7 people on my list, so we're going to need to move rather briskly since we are almost at the 9 o'clock hour.
Good evening, all. Now, I come today. My name is Stephen Proverbs. I'm a resident of St. Peter, live in Tree Hill, St. Peter. I'm also the former acting principal of the Alexandra School, this school. I come today not to lay any complaints, but to make a proposal and seek the partnership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and the Minister responsible for St. Peter, Mr. Jordan, Mia Motley, Sanjay Bradshaw, Colin Jordan, for a proposal I want to suggest. And I'm very glad that you touched on the topic of climate change, because that is, in essence, what my proposal relates to. And it's entitled, Small Island Developing State Response to Climate Change Through Education Reform. The case for building climate resiliency and sustainability through education reform at the Alexandra School in Barbados. So it's a project to look at resiliency at this school. Now, we are at a point in Barbados where we are talking about education reform, and this proposal will serve to show how the Alexandra School can be adapted for climate resiliency and sustainability as a part of this reform process, with the support of our Prime Minister and other funding agencies, well into the future. Now, this school is situated just about 100 meters from the gate to the sea. It's in the heart of Spikestown. It's just a few feet above sea level. It's low-lying, it's flood-prone, and it makes it especially vulnerable to climate change. Actually, last time I spoke at this school was when the Ministry of Education was here doing an expose on the education reform, and the day after, this same school was flooded, was underwater, and was shut for flooding due to some of the same issues that I would have spoken to. Now, we looked at Honorable Prime Minister on October 5th of last year at the launch of the education reform titled Reimagining Education in Barbados, A Bright Future for Every Child. You mentioned that audits are currently being carried out within the Ministry of Education to determine which schools would be best suited for being senior college of excellence and junior colleges of excellence. And you also mentioned that among the areas of study for the senior colleges of excellence would be the blue and green economy. And I'm proposing to you, and I also will propose to the Ministry of Education, that Alexandra School is ideally suited for development as a center for research in the blue and the green economies. Actually, the school is painted blue-green. The tunics of the school are blue-green. The school really needs to go blue-green. I also highlight in the proposal the challenges posed by climate change, but I also look at those challenges instead of something that is a negative, but as opportunities for how we can develop the school to address them, and opportunities with the help of the Prime Minister on how we can seek funding through grant proposals to achieve that. And I myself have limited experience with writing grant proposals for funding educational development. I actually raised $450,000 for a sustainable agriculture project at another secondary school where I was the deputy principal and the head of science in Barbados. And that was through writing successful grant proposals. And I'm willing to put in the hard work with the support of the Prime Minister and the agencies which I will outline to do the same for here. Now, the ministry had talked about the education reform being one where it's targeted at being fair, being firm, fair, inclusive, relevant, and modern. But I also want to make here firm, but I'm looking at it as being forward-thinking, imaginative, resilient, and a model for others. When I say forward-thinking, what I'm talking about is developing an institution that catering for the educational needs of now, but also for the future. Focus on the next big thing as it relates to, because a lot of what we learn today might not be relevant in 5 years. It might not be relevant in 10 years because the world is changing, and it's changing at an exponential rate. So we need to be forward-thinking. And we're looking to train in all the new jobs that will be coming forward, even more so in the blue and the green economies, due to climate change and having to address these issues. We want a place that's imaginative, reimagining what a school is, what a school does, and the purpose that the school serves. And we want it to be resilient because we're talking about resiliency, but we also want to build and construct and develop an institution which is in itself resilient and which exemplifies, when you look at the institution, when you look at how the buildings are constructed, when you look at how it is maintained with resiliency in mind. No, but students and the ministry would suggest involve proposing how it including how it can be tied to the with the green agriculture is one of my personal things in the department. Suggest like even if and you give the drama teachers the calm before they can go to town on climate change.
It's taking so long, but 6 months come under the Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act. And we, the people at 6 months, are actually entitled to purchase these lands. The purchase price of the land in plantation tenantry is fixed at $1 per square meter, or by agreement between partners, whichever is smaller. And if there are any doubts as to whether we qualify, I can refer you to 6 months being listed under plantation tenantry. In 2020, the Minister of Housing, Mr. Jordan Payne, at that time, had made an address on squatting concerns, indicating that government had plans to acquire certain lands not owned by government, and by process of transfer, read the Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act, they were able to do conveyances. He also went on to list 6 months as one of those places, even indicating that surveyors from the ministry were on the ground as the previous day, surveying. In December of that same year, the then Minister of Housing and Lands, Dr. Duguid, announced that squatters in Welsh Village, St. John, were given the opportunity to purchase land at 10 cents a square foot, and also cover the cost as it related to the value of the land. 4 years later, still nothing at 6 months, and I really would like to know why it's taking that long. That's my first issue.
The acting AG actually was checking out the issue for me. That's why he sent me a text. We have tried to have discussions on the part of government, and I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to prejudice any discussions that will continue. And as I said, and there's also the ongoing court case that the case is older than my length of time in the public life. I've been in public life since 1989, and I got a lot of gray hair. So this will tell you how long this has been going on. Our view was to try and see whether we could get a settlement without prejudice to anything. That is still our view. But a settlement has to be something that meets the satisfaction of both parties, correct? So I'm not going to get into it because I have not been part of the discussions myself. I have asked, however, the government officials to have the discussions with a sense of real commitment to finish. But at the end of the day, I leave that where it is. With respect to the other issues, the erosion is patent. With respect to the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, part of the difficulty will always be the definition of the foreshore, which was not included in the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, correct? So that I would argue, if I was Frank, and if I was you, that the foreshore is the land that get eroded already. You understand?
Well, it's still listed in the plantations tenantry in the list as part of the act.
But the plantation is a big plantation, so that it's not that simple. So all I'm saying is that, look, this is a complex issue. I am moving this. I would have much rather been in a position be in a position where this issue had been resolved in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s. But if it is ours to resolve in the 2020s, we will do our best to get it resolved for you, because you don't need to tell us how bad it is. And that's why we have been taken to this seriously. Okay? But at the end of the day, to get a successful negotiation, you need both sides, correct? If not, then the court has to decide. And it has been before the court for decades, regrettably.
Too long. My second area that I wanted to discuss was the proposed Pine Hotel at Sitzman, the previous Nikki Beach site. I would have attended the meeting they had in September on the environmental impact assessment report, and suggestions were made by the engineering team re the stormwater drainage runoff system and to upgrade the outfall to the north of the property in order to manage the runoff better to prevent flooding to the nearby residents. Also, a reverse osmosis plant was suggested as part of the plan, was suggested because of the expected water usage being 35,000 to 40,000 US gallons to cool the AC towers. And this doesn't include the actual laundering and maintenance that the hotel would require. And water being one of our scarce resources, I am wondering if it is that government will insist that the developers now and in the future, when undergoing these type of projects, have the reverse osmosis plants so as to...
Go ahead.
So as to preserve our water resource.
Okay. One of the reasons I went to the Netherlands this week with the Water Authority people is to follow up on initial things that Santi had started and for us to go. The reality is that if we impose all the costs on individual developers, Barbados will become uncompetitive and not be able to create the jobs that we need to create. So there's a balance between what individuals will carry and what we must carry as a nation. One of the reasons why we got the grant money, the $80 million grant money, is to be able to offset a lot of the things that we're facing as a result of the climate crisis. Suffice it to say that there are two containerized desal plants in the north, but without prejudice to that, we have also been looking at the issue, thank you, of groundwater. And for the last, 9, 10 months, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrogeology, led by Dr. Farrell, has been working with the Water Authority to be able to look at the groundwater. We actually took a presentation 2 weeks ago with respect to Mount Poyer, and we're also meeting with the Dutch to see how best we can extract and protect as much of the groundwater as possible, and then to see whether there are any possibilities for damming water before it goes into the shore. You can't get all of them, but all of it rather, but to see what is possible before we go fully to desal water, reverse osmosis, etc. So that is where we are now. I don't want to prejudice the outcome because we left the others on the ground in order for me to come back, and they'll be back by this weekend. And we will have a review as to what is necessary and what is critical for us to deliver. But whether we like it or not, Barbados is a water scarce country and has been for some time. Don't mind we don't get on so sometimes. It has become more acute in recent times. There have been some investments that are massive that have some plants. Sandy Lane Hotel, for example, has an RO plant. Not everyone, however, is going to be able to do it as a development. If not, Barbados just will be uncompetitive, and they'll go to another country, and we will not get the jobs. So there is a delicate balance in terms of how we go forward with it.
But really, the groundwater issue that you would have just mentioned, a lot of our aquifers were destroyed. So the groundwater is not going to...
I don't know, Alex, you want to speak to that? Because I'm not sure that I can say that a lot have been destroyed. I can say that a few have been under threat.
Including the one by Port Ferdinand, that one.
But I can't say that a lot have been destroyed. So I'd like the expert, Mr. Eiffel, and them, in the absence of the others from the BWA, to address you, because it's important that we operate from the same factual basis. I do know that there is a risk of saltwater incursion in some of the aquifers, but I don't know that it is fair to say that a lot have been destroyed. Alex?
No, yeah, this is a perception that people have, because one of the things in relation to, say, Port Ferdinand, people see that the area had brought water into that area, which was a natural water area before anyhow, and assume that this has negatively impacted our aquifers. That is not so. What has happened over the years that we've been using more water, we have been facing a very aggressive climate change, where we have long dry seasons. We have not moderated our own water demand. We still use the same amount of water or more, and therefore we suck more water out, less water is coming in, and therefore you get saline intrusion at certain times. And we moderate that by adjusting our pumping. So, and this was the debate that went out on the radio for a time, saying that, oh, they brought the water inshore, and it's therefore had impacted the aquifer.
That's actually not my perception.
Right? But basically, what has happened is that as the climate has changed and we pump the same amount of water, what has happened is you get the perturbance become more and more visual, or impact it more. But the aquifers are not destroyed. They are impacted at certain times this year by saline intrusion. That is why we manage our pumping to control those impacts.
What you're doing effectively is moderating the pumping to ensure that they're not destroyed. And why I asked Alex to speak is because when we came to office this last time, the first time, Wilfred, you were the minister in charge of water that came to us and told us that we're going to have to shut down pumping in this particular district in order to protect the aquifer and to ensure that we do not destroy it by the saline intrusion. So that's how I know, and that's why I've asked Alex to speak to you. But to the best of my knowledge, if it has happened, they have not advised me as Prime Minister, and certainly as Line Minister now for Water, that we have lost a whole set of aquifers. I don't know if you received any such advice either. We haven't.
No.
But we are trying to protect what we have. We know that there have been one or two, but we are trying to protect the majority of them by moderating the pumping.
Yeah, the impacted doesn't necessarily mean destroyed.
Okay. I wouldn't argue anymore, but read the next point would be read the milling and paving program. I'm hoping that 6 months is included in that, and I would have spoken to Mr. Jordan and Mr. Duguid when they had a meeting outside Pendry, read the areas in 6 months that would benefit from the milling. So I'm hoping that we can go forward with that. Okay, thank you.
That's fair, madam. That's very fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good night. First thing, my name is Pamela Orwell, despite the bypass road St. Peter. The last time I was here, I had asked about a number of roads. So far, I have to say thank you for doing lots of the roads around this area. Thanks for doing the Warley Road, but it is not up to standard as yet. I see that they were doing some work up to today. Thanks. And the WIM, thanks. I don't live in those areas, but I have to use the road to get home. Hopefully, I see that you say that you're going to do Highway 1. At least I noticed that the things were across the road from yesterday. I hope that I go across there later tomorrow. I will see some progress and it will be completed. Not just start and halfway done. So thanks about that. The other problem is the beach access here below the boardwalk. It has a little gate across it. It has tables and chairs and what's not. And you call that Prince Alfred Road. Well, that have a lane. It has a bit of thing across the road, halfway. I don't know. I would like to get to the beach, but I don't want to go down there and fall and break my hand and my foot. So I will hope that something is done about the beach access. The last point that I'm going to make, it pertains to hospital fees for colonoscopies. It was $263, and the fee has gone to $1,350. That is only using the facilities at the hospital. Now, other fees, when you add up all of that, that is over $3,000. Now, Barbados is in the top 2 in colon cancer deaths. If you want to reduce this, screening is important. If you have a cost like this, it is prohibitive to the normal person who does not have insurance. So I'm asking you, it was raised the last time, you said you were not aware of the fee. So I am giving you the actual cost, because I paid it. And I have receipts to prove to you that this is the cost of the
This
hospital.
is at the QEH.
At the QEH.
Right.
I'm talking about privately.
No, but that's why, and I keep getting confused because the figure
no,
you call,
QEH.
the figure you called is 3,000, right?
Pardon me?
The figure you called was how much?
No. I told you that it was $263. The fee has gone to $1,350. That is just the use.
And I keep making the point that if it has gone so, it has not come to cabinet. And I made that point then, I'm going to repeat it again. What I am aware of is that there is a plan to introduce wider screening for colon cancer. It is before you get to the colonoscopy, there's a way of screening people beforehand.
I know.
Only up to today, just before I went to the Nurses Association, the Minister of Health raised with me that that is what he is working on rolling out now in order to be able to have a wider coverage of persons who need to be screened. So I will give you the undertaking that we will check on the price, but I also know that this broader screening is something that he has been talking to me about in the Ministry of Finance to be able to get it off the ground.
But you know
Okay?
that. But are you aware that if you don't have this amount of money, you have to wait till, say, the waiting list is like, you see
the point now?
If you don't
Hold on,
have the money.
and that's the point I'm making, because that is where the confusion clearly is coming. Because there is a framework for people not to have to pay that money. The problem is, and you're raising it with me, and that is unacceptable. And I give you the assurance, Ms. Worrell, let me finish that.
I let you finish, yeah.
That is the assurance that I'm giving you, that we will address that to ensure that we can reduce the timelines. I have had now 3 meetings with the Ministry of Health since the beginning of January, looking at the total deconstruction and reconstruction of certain aspects of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I am not going to address it fully because Sante will tell you that that is going to be one of the heads that will be done in Parliament in the next week or 2. So they will roll out all of those things for you. I am not yet finished with them. We are meeting with them again week after next, and we're going through sector by sector, department by department, in terms of trying to reduce waiting times, in terms of trying to be able to increase the level of efficiency and all of that. Because what you're changing, madam, is regrettably 30, 40, 50 years of rules and practice that nobody has ever said, let's see how best we can do this. This is how we were hiring people, and these are the terms and conditions we were hiring people since the 1960s and 70s. That can't work today. This is how we were allocating. The hospital cannot be an institution that works from 8 to 4. Hospital is a 24/7 institution, and the question is, how best do we turn it into a 24/7 institution, even if it means sitting down with the unions and the workers' reps and the workers and saying, look, we're not being fair to you, we're not being fair to ourselves. The hospital spends, I believe, between 12 million and 7 million between overtime and on-call allowances. How do we take that 19 million and repurpose it to be able to have more staff available in order to be able to have a better turnaround for people, including the ones that you're talking about here? So suffice it to say that we are dealing with 2,500 people working at the hospital, and each one of them belong to either some staff association, a union, or different things. You can get it done, but it means that we've got to literally, what is the public purpose we're trying to serve here? What it is we could do better? Can we use technology to make this better for people? Can we agree with the workers and the workers' representatives that we need to change these terms and conditions rather than us now treating everything outside of 8 to 4 as overtime or on-call? So all of those things are being addressed now because we feel your pain and we hear it. And to that extent, we don't feel that if people genuinely don't have the money, they should not be made to have to suffer because they cannot get access to the services that we want to offer in a primary care, in a full hospital circumstance, as well as in the polyclinics that we have. That's why the government put out on last weekend request for RFI, request for information to be able to expand the services that we can offer at the hospital, because the hospital, in a very real sense, has all of the back offices of a hotel. But it is being asked to function 8 to 4 when a hotel functions what?
24/7.
24/7. Can't work. And then secondly, we also have committed, and I spoke to it this evening again, to expanding the opportunities for the nurses, and thirdly, expanding the facilities and refurbishing in the primary system, the polyclinic system. So the government is trying to build, we will build a new Randall Phillips Polyclinic, we will build a new Eunice Gibson. Right here, the Morris Bayer one has significant land attached to it that will allow us to expand. We don't need to build a new one here, but we can expand and put additional services here. So over the next 3 years, that's why you heard me say earlier, that we are now coming into the point where we can put the emphasis on education and health, and to have the level of investment that for the first 5 years in government, when we were trying to stabilize the economy, we could not do it. And then when COVID came, we had to spend most of our money on trying to fight the pandemic. Okay? So you perhaps have given me the answer. Because the difference is, it is not that everybody has to pay that increased amount. It is only those who want to go for certain types of services. If not, regrettably, you have to wait the 18 months. That is what I can help you solve, the 18-month deadline, the 18-month timeline.
Because,
all right?
Because why I ask this question, why have I raised this, is that the timeline, 18 months, 18 months, the diagnosis, it makes no sense then. That person is on their deathbed. So it makes no sense.
Madam, I hear you so much you don't even know, because let me tell let me tell you, because I don't play. You understand? And when it comes to colonoscopy, the doctors tell me come back 3 to 5 years, and I go every 2. Because I know that it is the one preventable form of cancer.
Yes,
because if you can take out, although the scientists will tell you nothing is preventable, but 99.99999%. Because if you take out the polyps, the chances of you getting cancer are minimal. And if you get it early, you can save people. So I am with you. That is why I'm having all these sessions and trying to stabilize this economy to make sure that the economy earns enough for us to resume normal service with investment in education and health care, while at the same time trying to find additional resources internationally to help us from the roads to the coastal infrastructure to the drainage and water, because that is where the climate crisis is choking us and trying to take away the money that we would spend elsewhere. When you heard me go to Paris last year with President of France, it was to make the point and get the world to recognize, do not ask me to choose between people and planet, because it's a false choice. Are you going to save the planet and the people going dead? Or are you going to try to save the people and ignore the planet and the people going still dead? It is a false choice. And that is exactly what we are contending with as individual countries. So that we would much rather not be here, but that is regrettably what we have to deal with. Both the environment and the people.
Okay. Okay, I'll hold you to it, because the next time you have it,
no, please
I will be asking again.
Please
because reduction in the cost is the key.
Well, no, not necessarily reduction in the cost.
Yes, more people will be able to go.
What we're trying to do is to reduce the timeline so that the people now who don't have the money should not have to wait 18 months for that. And that's what, so we need enough doctors and enough procedures. We need to get all the surgical theaters working, even if it means agreeing that 3 or 4 of the theaters can be shared with the private doctors in order to get the other 8 or 9 working. But you got to remember, say one thing, say next. I laugh, because he chair a hospital. Everybody don't want to address the elephant in the room. Yeah. And the elephant in the room is the terms and conditions of engagement for people that go back calling to when? The 1970s and the 1980s. And I've said that the tail cannot wag the dog, because people like you are coming forward and making noise. So I hope that when this conversation starts to get more complex and more in-depth, that people like you and others are going to keep coming forward, because the government is trying to make a change in whose interest?
I will hope, boy.
I will hope so too.
And all the public. The other question is, you were supposed I thought that they were having renovations at the hospital. Like when you pay and you go to a private ward, things in there are still obsolete. You could check.
Madam, I want you to go and turn right when you left this school.
Turn right?
Yeah, go tomorrow and turn right and go down to Harrison's Point. And see, no.
Turn right.
Turn right. Because you heard me say just now that the government has only now put out a request for information last weekend in the newspapers in order to be able to do the expansion at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital that we spoke about late last year. The reason why we couldn't do it before is what? You know how much money we spent at Harrison's Point?
Money on COVID.
Hold on. No, you know how much money we spent at Harrison's Point to make sure that the majority of people who came into the hospital would not have to stay in the hospital, because if COVID ever caught at QEH, do you want to know the kind of horrors that we would have seen at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital? So that the government borrowed money from the European Investment Bank at 1.65%, very cheap, in order to be able to take a building, Colin. We left, you were renaming the road down here after Kiara husband's the afternoon. And I left you and went with Dale Marshall at 5:45 the evening at Harrison's Point. When we got up there, the bush was 15 foot high. Everything, literally, was ripped out of the walls. And in 4 weeks' time, you had a hospital with more ICU beds there than the country ever had in 50 years at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital.
I know.
No, but no, we're not being fair. And you know that, Ms. World, I can be with you. I can give you the reduction in time at the hospital for the colonoscopy. But don't pretend as though the government did nothing with respect to the 3-4 years, because not only did we have to turn around and deal with Harrison's Point, but we then had to turn around and get additional clinics and spaces in St. Lucie with the district hospital, in Mr. Sparman, Dr. Sparman clinic name. We then had to use that in order to take some of the pressure off of A&E. And thank God we had agreed to build a new accident and emergency when we first came into office, because if you had the old casualty where the people was up so, you couldn't even then do the physical distancing. Now we ended up with no more capacity with the new casualty because of the physical distancing. But at least we could keep and maintain the same numbers. So I am so with you, but I also want you to remember what we have had to spend money on in the last few years. The doctors, the nurses, everybody, they had to work full time. The last government removed Flexi from them and the police. Who had to reintroduce it? Us. Then we turned around and we had hazard allowance and all of the other things that we paid people. So I want us, please, to remember that getting through, because we are making a certain noise, getting through the 3 years of COVID was among the biggest burden that we have ever had to carry. And we had to carry it, and we have not put the dollar at risk. We ain't sent home nobody in terms of permanent employment. We had some crash programs, yes, in order to help people live, because we knew that when 52,000 people had to draw unemployment benefit, we had to find a way to keep families' heads above the water. And that's what we did with the ASH program and everything else. Now, unemployment has come back down basically to single digit, and thank God for that. And the amount of projects that we have to roll out now will take care of that. But as it relates to the hospital, I've said to you, we're building 2 new polyclinics, finding the financing for that now. We're refurbishing the existing polyclinics, and we're doing significant expansion at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. That is all going to add up, and when the senior minister addresses Parliament, he will address what this is likely to cost us over the next 3-4 years and how we're going to roll it out. Okay? Including the objective of getting the hospital to be a 24/7 facility, because without that, we really, really, really impotent.
The last one that I'm going to ask you to do. They fixed Chapel Street. Chapel Street was fixed, but there's a manhole over 2 weeks now. Ain't many sense fixing the road and leaving a manhole for the next 6 months, then all your money wasted. And by the school, there's a hole there. MTW needs to come and do the little drainage and fix that. It makes no sense doing something and doing an incomplete job, because when you come back, you have to start back from fresh. It makes no sense.
Thank you, ma'am. And you and I have a date here next year. You and I have a date here next year. All right? I hope. No, I hope that I will be able to report progress. Yes, sir.
Good night to the head table. Madam, first I would like to congratulate you, Ian Bob. Everybody know me. Ian Bob, formerly of Queen Street, now resides at Sunset Heights, Manors, or Retreat, whatever you feel like calling it. Right? I'd like to congratulate this government on the excellent work it is doing. Forget the naysayers, Madam Prime Minister, and continue doing your best for the people of this country. Don't mind the naysayers, and I congratulate also on that cyber bill. I think it was very late in coming, because these people, we believe that because they got a camera or a computer in front of them, they could talk whatever they like, when they like, and how they like, right? And it was long in coming. They talk about, mislead people about the COVID, they mislead people about the ID cards. And now, it's good to see that the Beijers now is coming on board with the ID cards. But about the ID cards, madam, I think some information is missing off it, because I believe that every person's blood type and whether they're allergic to certain allergies should be on that ID card. I believe that with all my heart.
I think that what we can do is to check out whether it can be optional for those who want to carry it. And that will solve the problem of those who want it, as opposed to those who don't feel that they don't want it.
I think that would make sense.
I'd certainly
because
check it out.
Because if you get an emergency, nobody have to ask questions. Just put your card in and all the information will come out. I'd like to thank the Minister of Transport and Work for the work that they're doing in Queen Street. But I'm very disappointed about Chapel Street, as the last speaker was speaking, because there's a hoarding that was repaired, a house there, that was there for about 10 years. And the road come and get repaired around it, all around it, instead of putting on the hoarding, which is disintegrated now, because it's rotten. And it should be removed and fix the road properly. Now, people speak about the Colleton, the road to Colleton with the bush hanging over. I have that same problem on my way home, going up Wendover Hill. That is a very dangerous area. The hill needs to be widened. When you're coming down, driving, people coming up from the beach, the sun hit you directly on your eye, and there's no way for those people to go, to walk, nor anything. And it's a catastrophe waiting to happen. Now, when Port Ferdinand was building, they bring the sidewalk and take up a lot of the road, and that road is very narrow. That won't changing. I was shining a concrete truck a couple of weeks ago. I had to pull to my left because the truck was shining a lady who was walking from the sea, and I hit the sidewalk and burst my tire and damage and break my bottom arm, and I had to fix it. Right? A lot of people also complain about that. So I would like to see something done with that road going up Wendover Hill to see if we get hit widened. Now,
Thank you. I think they've taken a note.
Yes, I have a problem now where I live. Right? There is a waterway that the Ministry of Transport and Work is supposed to take care of. And no time that I go up to the depot up there, that you could get some out and clean it. It's full, it will be full of courage, etc. Now, I live next door there, so the coach is going to bother me. So
There's up in Maynard's?
There's Lower Maynard's.
Right.
Below Sugarcane Club. And I just have to pay to get that clean. Up to this week, I had to get it clean out. And got the overgrown bush at the side of the ravine. And I would like the NTW at least to bring the truck and at least take away the overgrown vegetation that was removed from the waterway. Also, we have a playground there. We have a playground that I was been asking for the longest time to see if NTW could come and help clear. We already cleared half of it, but we pushed the overgrown vegetation one side in the heat, hoping to at least get somebody from the ministry to come and truck it away, so that we, the residents of the area, could go ahead and establish our play park.
The land is owned by whom?
Which land? The play park?
Mm-hmm.
The play park is supposed to be owned by everybody in the area.
So it's a common area for the residents?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
And nobody takes care of it?
We are trying our best to take care of it, but what happened, it was overgrown so much
You
that when we
needed
push
help.
it away, we just want some help trucking away the bush,
I
and we
got
could
you.
do the rest.
I got you. So Minister Ford is going to deal with you, and they'll come and sort you out.
Yeah.
Okay, and get a clean and green site there. Okay?
Good. That much appreciated.
Most welcome, sir.
Yeah. Now, I have spent over 40 years in the education sector, both in Barbados and overseas. So it would be remiss of me not to say something about the education system in Barbados. Now, I would like to know what the government plan for the Parish school. Good? And
it's supposed to be opening back. So, but the minister's here, Ian. I don't want to keep people too late. I'm conscious that it's 10 to 10. But I would invite you, because I know you're a teacher of long standing, and I would invite you to speak to Minister McConaughey and speak, and she can update you on it.
Also, I want to go on record and say, I know this is what you can say is very unpopular to some people, but I would advise the ministry to leave the common entrance exam alone. Leave it alone. Something cannot be wrong with an examination where children could get 100% and a big set get 90%. Everybody's have to prepare for exam when you go to school. I am sure that the most of you all at that head table were prepared for the exam because they went to lessons. Children ain't dumb. A lot of children ain't dumb. Children just want a little extra help. And the most of these children who go to the older secondary schools have parents that can send them to lessons. I believe that Ampara School should be a school for remedial teaching only. And when I say so, I don't mean that a child will go there from Monday to Friday, 9 to 3. A couple children could come from Roller Area School and go there for a day or a couple hours, or say it's different to be taught the very basic thing.
Yeah, Ian, let me encourage you to put your views down and to share it with the Ministry of Education. There's a reason why a country does consultation. And the ministry has gone through extensive consultation across the country. I am waiting for the ministry to report back to me. We have promised to meet with the opposition, especially now that you have a new opposition leader. We intend to be able to meet with both him. One is the party leader and one is the political leader. I'm not sure which one, but we will meet with them, both. And trust me, this is a serious issue, because education is not, and let me be clear, the education reform that we undertake now is going to help who? People 7 years from now, 10 years from now, 12 years from now. So that this is an investment that all of us who love Barbados and who are prepared to love our children and make the best way for our children, we need to sit down and we need to settle what will be sustainable across all governments. I could tell you what I want, but it's not what I want. I could tell you what Santia wants, but it's not what she wants. It's not even alone what this government wants. And that's why I laugh when I hear all the talk about dictatorship and democracy under threat, because the one sure thing I know about this country is that there are certain investments that have to be sustained across the ages, and education is one of them. Now, I disagree with you fundamentally on the common interest because I don't think that it is fair to all. I think it is fair to just a few, 30%, 40%, but I am not the one to make the decision alone. And let's be clear on that. There are others who will feel strongly that there are better ways of making sure that we move all of our children and not just the ones at the top. There are people like Mr. Alwyn Adams who can give us chapter and verse about the history of how the common entrance came to be developed in this country and how it unfared so many of our, you got to say now, tens of thousands of children in this country. Who get unfair?
I was one of those.
That get unfair?
Yes, because in those days, when they had mostly transfer, when I sat the common entrance exam, I saw the teacher over people's shoulder showing them the work. Nobody come near me. You know
so why you would want somebody else to get unfair, Ian?
Because their parents could have paid the teacher to make sure that they get a good school.
But that's the same point that we was just making
exactly.
there with Ms. Worrell.
So when you do that,
I do not feel, let me be very clear. I lead a political party that has a very clear philosophy. We do not believe that labor should be taking the burden for other people to make money, and that is why we just passed the Labor Concessions Act in this country. Thank you, Colin Jordan. Thank you, the Barbados Workers Union. 2, we do not believe that people in this country should be penalized because of the station of their birth. Every child in this country deserves the chance to be the best that they can be. Now, we may not always get it right, but we have to work and work and work until we get it right. And that's why when we talked about the schools earlier, we talked about the fact that we need an audit at all of the schools. William Duguid has been meeting with the architects across Barbados because this notion that only private schools could look good and only private schools could have that kind of bucolic surrounding that make people want to study is a lot of foolishness. And if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to make sure that every school in this country is somewhere where people can feel good to send the children to school.
Yeah, I agree.
Thirdly, the notion that you have to have money in this country in order to get basic medical treatment, that you got to look for money to go to Sandy Crest or FMH is a lot of foolishness. Okay? And if you haven't heard me get on like this before, hear it from now on. Because I am not going to put up with a situation where people feel that only money is get respect in this country. Not me. And the party that I lead, and I'm satisfied because when it comes, they will tell you that when it comes to fundamental decisions, I don't come out and talk alone. What is do? Go around the room, round the table. And even though cabinet is a place that we don't take votes, everybody has to have a say on every fundamental issue, because when this train is moving, the train moving with everybody. The 1 or 2 who want to stand back, doesn't matter for you. Free choice. But the majority moving because philosophy informs policy. And so long as I can stabilize the patient to get the money, to do what has to be done, it shall be done. Now, if I could do everything all at once, that would have been great, but we can't. And I said tonight at the Barbados Nurses Association, I'm going to repeat it and repeat it until we get it in our heads. You know how vital foreign exchange is in this country? Everybody know it, right? Everybody know that you don't have enough foreign reserves, the dollar gone through, correct? The value of the dollar. But you know what else vital in Barbados now? You know what is as vital as foreign reserves? Anybody. Anybody can answer me. Anybody. No. People, skills. We have a serious shortage of skills in this country and people. And that's what's choking us now. And whatever sector it is, we have a shortage of it. whether it is in the nursing and the health sector, whether it is in construction, whether it is in technical areas, whether it is in plumbing, whether it is in a whole host of areas, project management, whether it is in people understanding utilities regulation. If this country does not come to terms with the fact that we do not have enough skills, we do not have enough people to do what has to be done to lift up all the heavy lifting, we are going to pay the price of diminishing returns and diminishing quality of life. And I want us to begin to understand it. When I did the 11 plus, there were probably about 5,000 children a year doing it. When I was Minister of Education, there were just under 4,000 people a year doing it. Today, it is about 3,100K. And in about 6 years' time, 5 years' time, Sandy, it is going to be about 2,200. Pick sense from that. Pick sense from that. So it means that while we were producing 5,000 kids a year leaving school, you are down almost now to 2,200 in a few years' time. At the moment, we are at 3,200. Work out that across the school roll of 9-10 years, and you work out how much less people in the school system than before. And that is why even when people talk about ratios, no government in Barbados has ever sent home teachers. Not true? And the same number of teachers that we had when there were 4,000 people, certainly in my 30 years, is the same number of teachers that we got today. You know that? So I want us to recognize that we have some challenges before us, but we are going to address them frontally. And with respect to education transformation, as we said from the beginning, 80% of it is non-contentious. But what will always be contentious is the transfer from primary to secondary. Regardless of what the transfer is, if we push children up who can't read, you got a problem. Regardless of what the transfer is, if we don't fix the schools that got environmental problems and shutting down, you got problems. Regardless of what the transfer is, if we don't train teachers to be able to teach the children in a different way and to have project-based learning and more types of learning that are collaborative, we still got the problem. Regardless of the transfer system, if we ain't teaching children to be numerate and literate, we still got the problem. So I'm saying to us, Barbados, all of us in this together. And there ain't no B, D, G, F, K, L, M. The only thing there is the alphabet, not the individual letters. So that we need to get on with it. As soon as we get the report from the Ministry of Education, we will be meeting, as I said, with the remaining people, because in fairness, I don't think we should make a decision without the current leader of the opposition having his opportunity to have his say. And then we will see what is sustainable across everybody. Recognizing that the country will make the decision as to what it feels is gold, and what it feels is bronze, and what it feels is platinum. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. A part of the transformation, you cannot leave out a code, a code of discipline for all the schools in Barbados.
We hear you, Ian, but the discipline now is that it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I said that I do not want, we've agreed that we will give back public servants an early afternoon, the days that they have to do this, but I still don't want to abuse the goodwill of them. So thank you, but I really want to urge you to speak to the Minister of Education.
All right, I'm going to cut short now because I wanted to talk something about the transport board, but...
No problem, but Santi will still listen to you, but no, we'll do it after.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Anyone who's next before we wrap up? Thank you.
Good night, Madam Prime Minister and members of Cabinet, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to ask a question. Sorry, my name is Limbrook Kamabach. I live in Ashton Hall, St. Peter. I wanted to ask a question as well as to make a proposal, but because of the time, I will only ask the question. We made some amendments to the legislation that regulates the Zone 1 areas. I want to know what are the implications for these amendments for areas like Ashton Hall and the WIM.
I can't tell you often. Alex, you can answer him, please.
Right. In relation to the areas that were previously zoned as Zone 1 and now zoned as Zone A, if a house has pre-existed before the new law came into place, those will be grandfathered in. So, but they will have to meet the conditions of having the septic tank and so forth. But you will not be forced to move if you are now in an area classified as Zone A that was formerly classified as Zone 1.
Okay, I understand. So what you're saying is that there can be no new constructions going on in these areas?
Right.
Right, okay.
Minister of Planning will answer you.
If I can also assist, what happened when we did the new zones? What was Zone 1 did not transfer exactly to Zone A. So Zone A is a smaller land space than Zone 1. So what that meant is that a lot of areas that were classified as you could not build on now have become buildable. So rather than being a Zone A, for instance, you may have done from Zone 1 now into Zone B, which means that you could now build on those lands, but you have to follow certain guidelines with those buildings. So what it did is it in fact opened up several thousand, freed up several thousand acres that previously were not buildable that are now buildable. And a lot actually was in the St. Peter and St. James area. They were one of the largest beneficiaries of that change. I hope that answers your question.
Coming back to your cup. Ladies and gentlemen, can you all hear me now? Okay. I want to thank everyone who came out and to once again say to you that these sessions continue to be informative. They're informative from the point of view of the suggestions that come, but they also remind us of the things that we need to stay focused on in delivering to the citizens of this country. And that is why, even though you may see some ministers at the head table, there are a number of other ministers in the audience sitting down, listening, taking notes, because this is what informs our work. Similarly, the public servants who are here, I want to thank them again for coming. And as I said, we've formalized, hopefully, that they will be able to take the half day in exchange for the night that you get for giving us the night. Because, no, and I'm being real, it is important that all of us engage with ordinary citizens in this type of environment. If we could do it during the day, we would, but most people are working during the day, and therefore we have to do it when people are available, hence in the evening. I also want to thank the Ministry of Public Works for continuing to do the videos that allow people to see where possible the work that is being done in their constituencies, and that allows you to know that this is not just talk, but that we are going to do our best to deliver wherever possible. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Have a wonderful evening, and please get home safely, all of you. Until next month, when we meet in St. Thomas at Parish Speaks. Thank you.